Chapter 184. Yu Hongyan looked at Xiao Yan and the other two leaving with a puzzled expression. He turned to look at Lin Feng. Senior, Lin Feng waved his hand, indicating that it was fine. He had left mana imprints on Xiao Yan and the others. As long as they didn't leave Sand Continent City, he could rush to their aid at any time if there was any danger at such a close distance. Miao Shihao looked interested. He covered his mouth and smiled. They're your disciples? They're all very extraordinary. Lin Feng could already selectively ignore many of Miao Shihao's sissy actions. Hearing that, he smiled indifferently. They're just a few good-for-nothing kids. I've made a fool of myself. Miao Shihao shook his head and clicked his tongue in wonder. Brother Shihao, I've never said nice things to compliment others. Your disciples are indeed extraordinary. When I was in Foundation establishment back then, I'm afraid I wasn't as strong as them. When they form their gold core or even nascent soul in the future, they should be the best among their peers. You flatter me, fellow Taoist. Lin Feng smiled faintly. After thinking for a while, he asked, is the vast ocean Dharma assembly only used to trade treasures? Miao Shihao stretched one of his hands into the air. His 5 slender, white, and jade-like fingers spread open. He raised his head and examined his fingers as he said indifferently, it's not only used to trade treasures. After the Dharma assembly officially starts, there will be many Tao techniques and spells that will be spread. He lowered his head and looked at Lin Feng with a smile. However, most of the things that people privately exchange during the Dharma assembly are incomplete. There aren't many valuable things. The truly good things can only be found in the official auction held by the Heavenly Trade Pavilion. Lin Feng asked silently, what are the requirements to participate in the auction? Minimum golden elixir period cultivation. You must have at least 1 treasure to participate in the auction. At the same time, you must have a person who participated in the Dharma assembly as a guarantor. If you fulfill these 3 requirements, you can receive an invitation. Miao Shihao continued, the guarantor can only vouch for 1 person at a time. Those who are invited can only bring 2 companions into the venue. Lin Feng nodded and looked at Miao Shihao with a smile. In that case, I'm afraid I'll need you to vouch for me. Miao Shihao laughed tenderly, it's just a small matter. Since you're interested, even if you don't say it, I'll still be your guarantor. While they were chatting, Lin Feng's heart suddenly moved, it's Xiao Budian. This feeling, did he go into the array that was set up by others? Thinking that the people of the Yu clan could possibly be in Sand Continent City, Lin Feng was still a little worried and stood up, before the auction officially starts, I will come here to look for Dao friend. At that time, I hope that Dao friend can vouch for me. Miao Shihao was a little reluctant. You're leaving just like that? Lin Feng shuddered and felt that he couldn't take it anymore. He laughed dryly, one of my disciples seems to have gotten into some trouble. I'll go take a look. Miao Shihao covered her lips and laughed tenderly, you say that your disciples shouldn't come back to look for you if they suffer, but in your heart, you still care about them. We'll part here. Dao friend, please don't see me out. Lin Feng turned and walked out. Yu Hongyan bowed to Miao Shihao and followed closely behind Lin Feng. Lin Feng pushed open the door of the quiet room and prepared to leave. Suddenly, a fragrant wind came from his side and he saw Miao Shihao following him. Miao Shihao's handsome face was filled with a curious smile, I also like those few disciples of yours, so I came to see what surprises they can give me. You won't mind if I follow you, right? Lin Feng laughed, Dao friend, you must see me make a fool of myself. Miao Shihao rolled his eyes at him coquettishly, look at what you're saying. How could I bear to? Lin Feng's mouth twitched, and he resisted the urge to smash his high nose bridge with a punch. He did not speak, but turned and walked out first. This clown, if he wanted to follow, then let him. The few of them left the shop. Lin Feng sensed for a moment, and then headed to the west of the Sand Continent City, arriving in front of a large residence. The house looks ordinary, but Lin Feng can faintly feel a sharp aura coming towards him from within, showing off its edge, but also carefully hiding it. It felt like he was facing a sharp sword that could be unsheathed at any time. Someone has set up a spirit formation here, and it's a powerful sword formation. Lin Feng carefully analyzed, a kind of sword Dao that bravely advances, treads on the sky, and sings loudly all the way to the 9 heavens. The sword intent within communicates with the 9 heavens, heaven and earth as one. And, I remember now, this should be the sword Dao of the Heavenly Sword Sect. The Heavenly Sword Sect, along with the Mount Shu Sword Sect, the Celestial Sword Sect, the Blaze Sword Sect, and the Wilderness Sword Sect, were all part of the 9 Heaven Sword Alliance. Their strength was even above the Celestial Sword Sect, the Blaze Sword Sect, and the Wilderness Sword Sect. In the 9 Heavens Sword Alliance, the Heavenly Sword Sect sat firmly in second place. The profoundness of their sword Dao, the number of experts, and the enormity of their power, were all second only to the Mount Shu Sword Sect. Miao Shihao looked at the sword formation set up in the residence in front of him, and his face also revealed a confused expression. Why is the Heavenly Sword Sect's Heaven Treading Stairs sword formation here? The Heavenly Sword Sect has a special foothold in the Sand Continent City, but that's in the north of the city. Lin Feng's gaze flashed, looks like it's someone's private residence. Without going in, Lin Feng raised his hand and drew a circle of light in the air. The image within the circle of light changed, and instantly the figure of the little guy appeared. The little guy was sneaky, like a fish swimming through the heavy sword formation. From time to time, rays of sword chi and sword aura would shoot out, as if forming a death net, blocking the little guy's path. The little guy did not fight it head-on, and stopped every 3 steps with his fingers. He actually constantly calculated the changing patterns of the sword formation, and moved unimpeded within the formation. What was even more amazing was that he did not use force to break the formation, and would not alarm the person who set up the formation. Lin Feng, Miao Shihao, and Yu Hongyan all looked curiously at the little guy, not knowing what he was planning in that little head of his. Amidst the dense sword chi, the little guy had already passed through the outer sword formation, and arrived at the main house of the residence. Here, the little guy's speed clearly slowed down. He calculated for a long time, and his little face immediately wrinkled into the shape of a bun. I can't calculate it, forget it. The little guy curled his lips, and brought his palms together. The power of wind and thunder accumulated, and directly blew away the sword chi in front of him. This time, it completely alarmed the sword formation, and countless rays of sword chi formed a flight of stairs in front of the little guy. However, every step of this flight of stairs was formed by countless rays of sword chi, and the higher it went, the more condensed the sword chi became, forming rays of sword aura. And at the top of the flight of stairs, cold light flickered, and the condensed sword aura was like a real flying sword, sharp and powerful. The little guy smiled, stepped on the wind and thunder, and climbed up the flight of stairs to the heavens. Outside the sword formation, Lin Feng and Miao Shihao looked at each other, and suddenly understood, so the person who set up the formation is not in the formation. The little guy made such a big movement, but the other party did not have the slightest reaction, and only the sword formation reacted automatically. Obviously, the person who set up the formation was not in the house, and went out. Lin Feng felt strange. Could it be that the little guy found something strange about this house? He watched patiently, and saw the little guy walking as if he was flying, quickly climbing up the stairs of sword chi. Every step that he stepped on, immediately looked like it had been trampled by an ancient beast, and was broken. At the top of the flight of stairs formed by the sword aura, the magic power was even more condensed, and the attack power was also stronger. The wind and thunder surged in the little guy's hands, and his power also became stronger and stronger. The storm and thunder interweaved together, and without waiting for his steps, he first bombarded the sword aura stairs, and immediately shattered the sword aura. A formation formed by a golden elixir period cultivator, so strong. The little guy's forehead was also covered in sweat, and he was panting, and his face was bright red. He did not stop, and instead rushed up the stairs formed by the sword aura at the top in one go. As soon as he stepped on the stairs, several ferocious sword auras rushed towards him. Among them, the heaven and earth were connected, and the sword intent that stepped on the sky was peerlessly fierce. However, after the previous preparation, the power of the little guy's unlimited wind and thunder magic had already risen to a whole new level, and the power was not the slightest bit weaker than the full power of a golden elixir period cultivator. For the current little guy, this kind of power was already on the verge of losing control. However, the little fellow had a very good grasp of the situation. It stopped the growth of the unlimited power of wind and thunder at the critical point that it could control. Then, it manipulated the majestic power of wind and thunder to meet the sword light that was activated by the sword formation. Within the violent shaking, the wind and thunder disappeared like smoke, and the sword aura was also smashed into pieces. The little guy laughed, and in a flash, he had already stepped over the last step. When he reached the top step, he did not arrive at the roof of the main house, but instead stepped into a secret room under the main house. The secret room was empty, and there were no furnishings. There was only a stalk of spirit grass planted on the ground in the middle of the secret room. That spirit grass was over a meter tall, and its slender stem and leaves were like bamboo joints. It was divided into 8 sections, and each section grew taller bit by bit. Its entire body was a deep blue color. Separated by the formation, Lin Feng could feel the astonishing medicinal power contained within. It was unexpectedly the same as the heavenly sword sect's sword Dao, as if it was connected to the mysterious concept of the 9 heavens. Beside him, Miao Shihao cried out in surprise, rank 9 heaven-reaching grass. This thing is not commonly seen. It is only found in the heavenly sword sect's blessed land, Heavenly Mountain. Rank 9 heaven-reaching grass. The moment Miao Shihao said the name, Lin Feng immediately knew that this stalk of spirit grass was the secret medicine of the heavenly sword sect, the main ingredient of the heaven-reaching pill. The heaven-reaching pill had the same effect as the 33 days fortune immortal pill in Lin Feng's system. Both could raise the cultivation level of the user, but the medicinal effects were not as domineering as the 33 days fortune immortal pill. The heaven-reaching pill raised the cultivation level of a cultivator, but there was a certain chance of failure. Even so, it was definitely one of the few miraculous medicines in the entire heaven primal world. To a certain extent, it had established the heavenly sword sect's strong position in the divine land. The rank 9 heaven-reaching grass in front of him only had 8 sections, and it was clearly not fully mature. But the little guy did not care so much. Although he was the only one in the secret room, he still looked around furtively. Then he grabbed the rank 9 heaven-reaching grass and plucked it out of the ground. Yu Hongyan looked at this scene in a daze, and then looked hesitantly at Lin Feng. Senior, Tianhao, he. The corner of Lin Feng's mouth twitched, and he did not answer. Miao Shihao could not stop giggling. What else could it be? Stealing other people's spiritual medicine. More accurately speaking, it is no longer stealing, but openly robbing. Barging through other people's sword formation, directly robbing them. I'm dying of laughter. This kid is interesting, I like him. He suits Brother Shihao's taste. Lin Feng looked at the little guy expressionlessly, wailing in his heart. Disciple, we are upright people. Your image has been completely ruined. Chapter 185. The little guy plucked the level 9 heaven-piercing grass and used his fingers to poke at the bamboo-like slender stem and leaves. He smiled. Just as that person said, it's a rare treasure. His large eyes darted around. Oh, I have to leave quickly. Otherwise, that person will come back. With that, the little guy slipped out of the house and disappeared into the crowd on the street. Lin Feng looked at his back speechlessly. Seeing Miao Shihao look over, he coughed. Ahem, I've made a fool of myself. Miao Shihao smiled. You're too kind. I like this little guy a lot. Lin Feng laughed dryly. My dear disciple, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse for you to be admired by such a sissy. Lin Feng was busy dealing with Miao Shihao when he suddenly thought of something. He looked into the distance. There, a group of people was walking towards the house. Looking at the posture of the person leading the way, it was obvious that the owner of the house had returned. This person was dressed in green with a blue silk sash around his waist. A long sword hung from it. Above his head was a pillar of sword light that reached the sky. It was as if a heavenly gate had been opened and spiritual energy from the heavenly realm was being drawn to the mortal world. Such characteristics were the characteristics of the cultivators of the Heavenly Sword sect. Moreover, he was a Heavenly Sword sect cultivator who had formed the golden elixir. Behind him were more than 10 people dressed in different clothes. Their cultivations varied, but most of them were like unsheathed swords, full of killing intent. Among them, there were 4 elders whose auras were condensed. They were like sharp swords in their scabbards. When needed, they would explode. They were much more terrifying than those who exposed their auras. Their auras were always exposed. In fact, their essence energy was scattered. It was easily eroded by the wind and rain of the outside world. One day, it would lose its sharpness and decay. And these 4 elders were all cultivators of the golden elixir period. They could already lock their magic power and sword chi. Only in battle would they explode with dazzling brilliance. Usually, they hid their auras. When they were truly unsheathed, their sword intent and killing intent were even fiercer. All of these people had one thing in common. They were equipped with long swords. Regardless of whether they were hung at their waists or carried on their backs, their long swords all looked exactly the same, as if they were produced on an assembly line. The scabbard was engraved with a simple and heavy engraving of mountains and rivers, which was the symbol of the Mount Shu sword sect. These sword cultivators were all Shushan cultivators. The Heavenly Sword sect cultivator led the way and smiled. I've moved the level 9 heaven-reaching grass into the secret chamber. It will take some time for it to fully mature. Seniors, please stay in my humble abode for a few days. The conclave is over. The spiritual herb should be fully grown by now. The leader of the 4 old men from Mount Shu sword sect stroked his long beard and nodded in satisfaction. Fellow Taoist Fu Shua, thank you for your hard work. The heavenly sword cultivator named Fu Shua laughed. I'm going to join Shushan, so I can't possibly come empty-handed. But when the time comes, I hope that Elder True White will put in a good word for me. His words were too blunt, and the Shushan sword cultivators all curled their lips. But they were still very satisfied. After all, they had obtained the most precious spiritual herb of the Heavenly Sword sect. It was a considerable gain. The 4 golden elixir period elders looked at each other, satisfied smiles on their faces. The Heavenly Sword sect's strength has soared in recent years, and their actions have become more and more unbridled. They even tried to challenge our position as the #1 holy land of the sword. It's time to take them down a notch, and let them know that the might of Shushan is not to be trifled with. Elder True White stroked his long beard, thinking, without the advantage of the level 9 heaven-reaching grass and the heavenly reaching pill, the Heavenly Sword sect will not be able to make any big waves. The Shushan sword sect had also coveted the level 9 heaven-reaching grass for a long time. They had plotted in secret, and were just short of openly asking for it. The Heavenly Sword sect had naturally guarded against it. Even if there had been people who had defected to Shushan, no one had been able to bring a single leaf of the level 9 heaven-reaching grass out of the Heavenly Sword sect. But this time, Fu Shua had successfully brought out an entire stalk of heaven-reaching grass. Although it was only a seedling, it had attracted the attention of Shushan. Thinking of this, Elder True White decided to speak frankly. You can rest assured. I will put in a good word for you in front of the old ancestor. This matter involves the level 9 heaven-reaching grass. Even the sect leader might make an exception to meet you. Hearing this, Fu Shua's face lit up, but he managed to keep his composure. He nodded, smiling as he gestured with his hand. For elders, please. I will bring you to see the level 9 heaven-reaching grass. Halfway through his words, Fu Shua suddenly froze. He sensed carefully, and his back broke out in a cold sweat. He had already sensed that the heaven-treading stairway sword formation that he had set up in his house for protection had been broken. Calm down, calm down. Fu Shua bit his tongue, forcing himself to calm down. Although he was burning with anxiety, he did not show it in front of the Shushan sword sect cultivators. He still held a glimmer of hope in his heart. Perhaps the other party had not discovered the level 9 heaven-reaching grass he had hidden in the secret room. In fact, apart from the level 9 heaven-reaching grass, Fu Shua had also left other talismans, spiritual medicines, and other treasures in the house. Fu Shua was now begging heaven and earth, hoping that the other party had only taken away the other things in the house. It did not matter if these things were lost, but the key was that the level 9 heaven-reaching grass must not be lost. In particular, this spiritual grass still needed a few days to mature. If it was pulled out now, all the previous efforts would be in vain. Everyone, please follow me. Fu Shua felt uneasy in his heart, but he still looked calm on the surface. He took the lead with great bearing and led everyone into the house. However, the nervous Mr. Fu Shua did not notice that he was actually walking with a limp. After entering the main house of the big house, they went straight to the secret room. As soon as he opened the door, Fu Shua's vision darkened, and he almost fainted. In the empty secret room, there was a big pit on the ground. The level 9 heaven-reaching grass had disappeared. It had been dug out by someone, including the stem and leaves. Elder Real White and the other Shushan sword cultivators who came in behind Fu Shua saw this scene, and their faces all darkened. Elder Real White frowned and asked, "Fellow cultivator Fu Shua, what's going on?" "Some goddamn bastard dug out the spiritual grass by the roots while I was away." At this moment, Fu Shua's face was ferocious, and his whole body was in a state of frenzy. The sword chi all over his body surged uncontrollably, forcing several Shushan sword cultivators in the building foundation stage with lower cultivation to retreat. Although he had a vague premonition, Fu Shua was still hysterical at this moment. His eyes were bloodshot, and he could not wait to skin the person who had stolen the spiritual grass. He had defected from the Heavenly Sword sect and joined Shushan. For the Heavenly Sword sect, he had already committed a crime punishable by death. Originally, his sect would definitely want to kill him. If he wanted to live, he could only rely on the protection of the Shushan Sword sect. But if he lost the level 9 heaven-reaching grass as a stepping stone for his advancement, the Shushan Sword sect might not spare no effort to protect him. Although Shushan and the Heavenly Sword sect were always dirty in private, they were still members of the 9 Heavens Sword Union in name, and the Shushan Sword sect was the leader of the union. No matter what, it could not be justified to shelter a defected disciple of an allied sect. Only the level 9 heaven-reaching grass could make the Shushan Sword sect spare no effort to protect him. Now that the heaven-reaching grass was gone, the shadow of death suddenly floated over Fu Shua's heart, making him almost unable to breathe. The spiritual qi in the soil has not dissipated completely. The person who stole the spiritual grass must not have gone far. After him. We still have a chance to get it back. Fu Shua roared angrily. He did not even have time to call out to Elder Real White and the others. His whole body turned into a sword light and soared into the sky, directly piercing through the secret room and the roof of the mansion. Elder Real White and the other Shushan sword cultivators looked at each other and nodded. Fu Shua had already committed suicide in the Heavenly Sword sect. If he dared to play tricks on Shushan again, no one in the world could protect him. Looks like someone really took advantage of the loophole and stole the spiritual grass. Elder Real White said in a deep voice, "The level 9 heaven-reaching grass is very important. We must also chase after it. We must find the spiritual grass. This spiritual grass is already the property of our Shushan. The person who stole it must pay the price in blood. More than 10 sword lights soared into the sky and chased after Fu Shuo. The little guy walked on the street and was happily calculating, I can bring it back to master. However, there are a total of 8 sections. Should I eat one first? As he was thinking, the little guy suddenly felt a threatening killing intent behind him. He looked back and saw a green sword light that seemed to pierce through the sky. It cut through the clouds and flew towards him. A middle-aged man in a green robe stood on the sword light. It was Fu Shuo. With a sweep of his magic power, he discovered the spiritual grass on the little guy's body. He immediately scolded, "Little bastard, put the spiritual grass down." The little guy stuck out his tongue and stepped on wind and thunder. His speed instantly increased and disappeared like a wisp of smoke. Fu Shuo was seething with anger and roared, "Heaven-reaching sword escape." His entire body soared into the sky and combined with his own sword light in midair. Using his body to control the sword, he transformed into an extremely bright green light and pierced down from the sky. Fu Shuo's heaven-reaching sword escape was extremely fast like lightning. In the blink of an eye, he had already caught up to the little guy. The little guy turned his head to look at the sword light and said with dissatisfaction, "You are so unreasonable. Spiritual grass is meant to be eaten. You are too stingy." These bold and confident words almost choked Fu Shuo to the point of vomiting blood. He was almost separated from the sword light. "I'll let you eat it." Fu Shuo's eyes were blood red. He exerted even more strength in his hand. The destructive power of an initial stage golden elixir sword cultivator was displayed to the extreme. He wanted to nail the little guy to the ground with one strike. "You dare to steal my spiritual grass. Even dying 10,000 times is not enough." The little guy heard this and laughed. He flipped his small palm and revealed a golden disc. The golden plate shone brightly, and suddenly, a ferocious tiger with a platinum glow darted out from it. It let out an earth-shaking roar, and countless strong gusts of wind, which were as sharp as steel blades, cut Fu Shuo's sword light into pieces. The platinum tiger's bell-like eyes looked at Fu Shuo. Its powerful aura made his whole body weak. Golden elixir peak. Fu Shuo's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. The huge tiger swung its huge claws as if it was swatting a fly. It directly sent Fu Shuo, who was one with the sword, flying. Chapter 186. Golden Elixir Initial Stage Heaven Connecting Sword Cultivator Fu Shuo came in a hurry and left in a hurry. He arrived in front of the little guy like a flash of lightning and then was sent flying with an even faster momentum than when he came. At this moment, Fu Shuo felt as if thousands of ancient vicious beasts were madly galloping in his heart. He never thought that this medicine thief who seemed to be only at the middle stage of foundation establishment actually had a peak golden elixir tiger soul essence in his hands. What made it even more difficult for Fu Shuo to bear was the little guy's laughter. Unreasonable people should be taught a lesson. Fuck, who was unreasonable in the end? Fu Shuo, who was still in the air, was so angry that his eyes turned black and he saw stars. He wanted to open his mouth to curse back, but his nose suddenly hurt and he ate a mouthful of sand. It turned out that at this moment, he just happened to fall on the ground, and unfortunately, he hit the ground face first. More than 10 sword lights in the sky, some fast and some slow, followed Fu Shuo to the scene. Everyone was dumbstruck as they looked at the scene in front of them. They never thought that in just a few seconds, Fu Shuo, who was a step ahead, had already been beaten to the ground. Elder True White and the other 4 Shushen Golden Elixir period sword cultivators looked at each other. True White took a step forward and looked down at the little guy. "Kid, did you steal the 9th stage heaven connecting grass?" The little guy's eyes rolled. "I don't know what you're talking about." He glanced at Fu Shuo, who was lying on the ground, and curled his lips. "This person's brain is sick and unreasonable. He attacked me as soon as he came up, so I taught him a lesson." What a crafty kid. Elder True White was so angry that he laughed. "Looks like I'll have to let you suffer a bit first." He patted the scabbard at his waist and a sword light flew out, targeting the little guy. The little guy's mind moved and the tiger's soul essence angrily roared. It opened its big mouth and a door wide, tens of meters long golden light shot out. Gung metal destruction demon light. It was incomparably sharp and had the power to cut through everything. It was even better than Elder True White's sword light. Elder White Real smiled. Although it is the power of the peak of the golden elixir, it is, after all, a spiritual essence without intelligence. It has power but is unable to use it freely. How can it compare to our Shu Mountain's supreme sword path? He made a sword incantation gesture with his finger, and the sword light he released suddenly disappeared when it was about to touch the Gung metal destruction demon light of the demon tiger's soul essence. Without waiting for the little guy to react, the sword light that had originally disappeared directly passed through the demonic tiger's soul essence that was guarding in front of him, and suddenly appeared out of thin air in front of him, almost within reach. At this moment, Xiao Budian could even clearly feel the cold sword intent, causing goosebumps to appear on his throat. Stop him! The little guy's mind spun like lightning. At the moment of imminent peril, the demon tiger's soul essence in front of him roared, and its originally casually drooping tiger tail suddenly stood up. It was like a steel whip as it fiercely lashed at True White Elder's sword light. Clang! Both sides collided with a metallic sound. The sword light was flung to the side by the tiger's tail. In midair, True White Elder frowned slightly. Is the lesser rule sword not powerful enough? The sword he used just now was one of Shu Mountain's 6 meridian swords, the lesser rule sword. Cutting through the void, turning the horizon into a very short distance, it could travel through space to kill the enemy. Shu Mountain's lesser rule sword was one of the few Heaven Primal World's golden elixir period cultivators could practice it. It was one of the powerful abilities that could travel through space. According to the level of a cultivator's cultivation and their understanding of the sword path, the distance they could travel through space also varied. At the same time, the sword path's attack power also varied. Among Shu Mountain's 6 meridian swords, the lesser rule sword was the most agile and the fastest, but correspondingly, its pure attack power was on the low side. True White Elder glanced at the demon tiger's soul essence again and frowned. He said to the other 3 golden elixir period Shu Mountain cultivators, let's attack together and quickly settle this. There are too many people here, and it won't be good if we drag this out. A short and stout Shu Mountain elder said unconcernedly, so what if it's the Heavenly Trade Pavilion? The tall elder beside him shook his head. The Heavenly Sword sect has already discovered that Fu Shua stole the level 9 heaven-reaching grass and escaped. They will soon chase us here. It won't be good to shed all pretense of cordiality here. The short and stout elder laughed coldly. What's not good about it? If the Heavenly Sword sect dares to be noisy, we'll cripple them. I'd like to see if they have the guts to come up to Shu Mountain to talk nonsense. The elder who had been silent all this time, who looked to be the oldest and was already getting on in years, said, if the Heavenly Sword sect dares to talk nonsense, our Shu Mountain's 30,000 immortal swords will directly bury their heavenly mountain. But this is not up to you and me to decide. We need the sect leader and various elders to make arrangements. What we need to do is to get the level 9 heaven-reaching grass as soon as possible. True White Elder said, that's it. Let's finish this quickly. The other 3 nodded. Their figures flashed, and they spread out. Together with True White Elder, they stood in 4 directions, surrounding Xiao Budian and the spirit of the demon tiger in the center. True White Elder's left hand moved in front of his chest, and his right hand pointed towards the sky. A majestic sword chi enveloped his body, rushing upwards into the clouds and descending to the ground. It was like a pillar of chi that supported the vault of heaven. Within the sword chi, countless spatial fragments resonated with each other, sparkling and translucent. The other 3 also did the same. The short and stout elder revealed a cold smile. The sword chi that enveloped him was the thickest, flickering with cold light, intimidating one's soul. The power it revealed was the most ferocious and violent, as if it could destroy everything in the world. The Shaoshang sword was the most ferocious and tyrannical sword of Shu Mountain's 6 meridian sword. The oldest elder looked like he had 1 foot in the grave, but at this moment, his entire body was enveloped by a white mist-like sword qi. His spiritual power fluctuations were the most powerful and vigorous among the 4. Those white mist-like sword qi were faintly discernible, as if they did not have any strength. They constantly changed shape in the wind. However, knowledgeable people could recognize that this was the extreme Yin sword of Shu Mountain's 6 meridian sword. The sword was like a mist, and did not have a fixed shape. However, this did not affect its valiant killing power in the slightest. Because its shape was not fixed, it was even harder to guard against. That tall elder expressionlessly looked down at the little guy on the street below. The sword qi he released was a pure gold color. It was not bright and ostentatious, but rather gentle and heavy. It was like a mountain that could calm the seas and hold up the heavens. In front of this golden pillar of qi, anyone would seem to be a head shorter. They would obediently kneel down, repent their sins, and peacefully await execution. The Shaoyang sword was the most neutral and gentle sword within Shu Mountain's 6 meridian sword. It was the most difficult to cultivate, but after cultivating it, it would be perfect and flawless. The benevolent were unequaled, and there was not the slightest flaw. It was publicly recognized as the head of the 6 swords. The 4 great golden elixir period elders of Shu Mountain acted together, giving the little guy enough face. The 4 pillars of sword qi were like pillars that supported the heavens in all 4 directions, incomparably imposing. What was even more frightening was that the 4 people's magic power gradually began to resonate. The vast and mighty sword light and sword qi linked together, forming a simple formation. Within the sword formation, all of the spiritual energy was expelled cleanly. Only the boundless sword qi remained, and the space around the little guy was actually sealed. This was the full preparation the 4 of them made in order to prevent the little guy from breaking through the void and escaping with a teleportation talisman. True White and the other 3 had considered every possibility. They were determined to obtain the 9th rank heaven-connecting grass. Facing such a formation, the little guy's expression also became serious. However, he was not afraid. Instead, he patted the demonic tiger's soul essence in front of him. "Partner, please lend me a hand." The demonic tiger's soul essence growled, and its entire body shone with golden light. After going through Lin Feng's refinement, it no longer had its own thoughts, so it was fearless. It would only wholeheartedly listen to the golden disk's owner's orders. The little guy's 2 palms joined together, and surging lightning and whistling gales continuously interweaved and fused together. They mutually grew, and their strength became stronger and stronger. True White and the other 3 elders in the air saw this and couldn't help but shake their heads and laugh. That tall elder seemed to cherish talent. To have such a cultivation at such a young age, your temperament can also be considered strong, and your courage is commendable. Forget it, as long as you hand over the 9th rank heaven-connecting grass, this old man will act as your guarantor. Today's matter will not be investigated, and you will even be accepted into my Shu Mountain sect to learn the Tao. Are you willing? The little guy blinked his eyes, and did not say anything. However, the endless wind and thunder techniques in his hands did not stop. That short and stout elder that cultivated the little Shang sword coldly snorted, "You don't know what's good for you, brat. If you want to live, quickly hand over the 9th rank heaven-connecting grass and surrender. Letting you enter my Shu Mountain sect is your good fortune. Don't be so ungrateful." The little guy curled his lips. "Enough. If you have any other tricks, bring it on. When have my Xianmen Tianzong disciples ever been afraid?" Xianmen Tianzong. The short and stout elder sneered, "I've never even heard of this name before, yet you dare to mention it in front of me. Who knows which corner of the world you're from?" He still wanted to say something, but his expression suddenly changed greatly. The space that was sealed by their sword qi suddenly split open with a large crack. The sword qi and magical power that were originally closely connected between the 4 of them were now separated by an invisible wall, and they were no longer able to communicate with each other. Their sword formation had been inexplicably broken. The sword chi scattered in all directions, and the sky was once again visible above their heads. The clouds suddenly separated to two sides, revealing three figures. One of them was a young girl wearing a fiery red outfit. She had scarlet hair and a red complexion, and her entire body seemed like a raging flame. The other was an abnormally handsome youth wearing a violet robe with golden edges. The corners of his eyes carried a smile, and his facial features were picturesque. It made his entire body lose all of its masculinity, and instead made him seem even more enchanting and charming than the red-clothed girl. This youth covered his lips and lightly laughed, but he did not look at the four people below him. Instead, half of his attention was placed on the person in front of him. They were naturally Yu Hongyan and Miao Shihao. And in front of them, there was a person who took the lead. His feet stepped on the void, and he walked down from the clouds. It was precisely Lin Feng. The short and stout elder sternly shouted, "Who are you?" Lin Feng indifferently swept his eyes over him. "I am the master of the mysterious gate, Lin Feng. Perhaps you haven't heard of me. No matter, after today, my name and the name Xianmen Tianzong will be even more profound in your memory than the Shu Mountain Sword Sect." Chapter 187. After today, this name will definitely leave a deeper impression in your memory than the Shushan Sword Sect. Lin Feng's tone was light, as if he was talking about a small matter that was not worth mentioning. But in the ears of the Shushan sword cultivators, it was undoubtedly extremely piercing. The short and stout elder laughed coldly and said, "Your Excellency is boasting too shamelessly. Even Taishu Temple doesn't have the guts to boast in front of my Shushan." Lin Feng smiled slightly and didn't say anything more. Instead, he looked towards the other side of the sky. Miao Shihao, who was behind him, also did the same, with a faint smile on his face. In the distant horizon, the clouds suddenly dispersed, and an extremely cold aura came. It was bone-chilling, and almost froze everyone present. An ice-blue cloud, carrying a group of people, descended from the sky, and approached Lin Feng and the others. On the cloud, a group of people dressed in red, were the Red Mist sect cultivators who had previously clashed with Lin Feng and Yu Hongyan. In the middle of this group of red-clothed cultivators, there was a red-robed youth, who was staring at Yu Hongyan with a face full of resentment. But he didn't dare to make the slightest movement, and stood respectfully behind the group of white-clothed people. These white-clothed cultivators, in front of the Red Mist sect cultivators, clearly had a sense of superiority, and their cultivation realms were indeed higher than their red-clothed companions. Especially the white-clothed old man at the front. His terrifying spiritual power undulated, as if he wanted to tear the void apart. Impressively, he was a Yuanian great cultivator. That bone-chilling cold aura was emitted from his body. He didn't make any movements, and just stood there, causing the temperature of the entire Sand Continent City to drop by a large margin. Sand Continent City, which was located at the edge of the desert, was still unbearably hot, although it was already autumn. And this white-clothed old man slightly released his spiritual power aura, instantly causing the entire city to descend from the height of summer into the depths of winter. Lin Feng didn't even need to look to be able to guess that this person is definitely a nascent soul ancestor of the Yu clan. Moreover, the Dao technique that he cultivates should be the Yu clan's dark nether art that's been passed down directly. The red-robed youth stared at Lin Feng and Yu Hongyan, and said to the white-clothed old man, "Sixth great-uncle, it's these two who didn't stop after I announced the Yu clan's name. Instead, they fought even more fiercely." This white-clothed old man was called Yuan Feng, and had an extremely high status in the Yu clan. He was the sixth great-uncle of the current Yu clan patriarch, and the red-robed youth followed suit. Yuan Feng glanced at Lin Feng and Yu Hongyan, then turned his head to look at the red-robed young man and said coldly, "This is what you call a gigolo, a mortal, without any cultivation?" Just as the red-robed youth was about to speak, his eyes suddenly widened, and he couldn't make a sound. At this moment, he also saw Lin Feng standing in the air, purple chi rippling around him, and even lifting up the middle stage foundation establishment realm Yu Hongyan, who was originally unable to stand in the air. How could this be a mortal without any cultivation? To be able to stand in the air, that was an ability that only cultivators in the Golden Elixir period had at the very least. The red-robed youth was momentarily speechless, and his gaze towards Lin Feng was full of hidden bitterness. Look at you, your spiritual power is clearly far above that beauty, but you didn't make a move, and didn't even say a word. You let that middle stage foundation establishment realm beauty fight against a dozen of us. Are you even a man? Alright, although that middle stage foundation establishment realm beauty really had the ability to fight against a dozen of them, and even gain the upper hand by making a show of strength, and even beat them away. But the red-robed youth was still extremely resentful in his heart. You're clearly a tiger, but you pretend to be a cat, causing me to lose face in front of 6th grand uncle. I spent so much to save up a good impression in the past, and now it's all gone. Although Yu Wanfeng was dissatisfied with the red-robed youth, he didn't care, and glanced sideways at Lin Feng and Yu Hongyan. Red Haze sect is also considered a subordinate of my Yu clan. Since you dare to provoke my Yu clan, you'll have to pay the price. With that, Yu Wanfeng stretched out his hand and grabbed at the air. Endless cold air suddenly gathered together, transforming into a giant hand that grabbed towards Lin Feng and Yu Hongyan. You delivered yourself to me, Lin Feng sneered in his heart. He could use this person to test the quality of a Yuanian cultivator. You dare to touch my friend in front of me, how can it be so simple? Miao Shihao, who was beside him, suddenly laughed delicately. I haven't repaid you for giving me the Tiani True Water, let me take care of this for you. As he spoke, his right hand formed an orchid shape, and he pointed at the giant hand made of cold air that Yu Wanfeng was grabbing towards him. In mid-air, a wave of light suddenly flashed, and numerous rays of light formed a perfect diamond shape in the air. The diamond shape flashed with a faint light, like a mirror without a frame, and it reflected Yu Wanfeng's giant hand of cold air. The surface of the mirror suddenly rippled like water, and from the surface of the mirror, a giant hand of cold air actually reached out. Its size, shape, strength of mana, and cold air were all exactly the same as Yu Wanfeng's giant hand of cold air. It was just like a real object, and the reflection in the mirror, but at this moment, the reflection in the mirror turned from illusion to reality, and became a real object. Copy? No, it's a reflection, or rather, a reflection. Lin Feng's eyes suddenly lit up. The two identical giant hands of cold air clapped together, and with a loud bang, there was a loud explosion, and the cold air filled the air, turning into a cloud of ice mist in the air. Supernatural state. Yu Wanfeng's expression changed, and he carefully looked at Miao Shihao's appearance, and blurted out, Mirror Flower Perfected Lord, Miao Shihao? Miao Shihao smiled slightly, that's me. Yu Wanfeng's expression was gloomy as he stared at Miao Shihao, and his tone was so cold that it was almost like ice shards. Miao Shihao, this old man respects that it wasn't easy for you to obtain your cultivation. Now, turn around and leave, this old man will pretend that nothing happened. Otherwise, with your cultivation of the early stage of Yuanying, do you really think that you can withstand the anger of the Yu family? Don't end up dead when the time comes. Miao Shihao smiled indifferently, so scary, it really scared me to death. With his hands behind his back, he looked up at the sky, and his vision was a little blurry, and his eyes seemed to be dreamy. A person's life is but an illusion. Even if one cultivates to achieve immortality, there will be a day when one's head will turn into nothing. You can escape death, but can you escape the extinction of the world? Since that's the case, what's there to fear about life and death? What's there to care about? Yu Wanfeng nodded slowly, his expression as dark as water. All right, since that's the case, this old man will send you to reincarnation now. He put his palms together and made a hand seal, and an ice-blue ball of water suddenly appeared in front of him. Dense cold air emerged from the ball of water, and the surrounding temperature instantly dropped by a lot. Snowflakes actually floated in the sky. Lin Feng looked at the ball of water, and his pupils shrank slightly. Rather than saying it was water, it was more appropriate to call it ice. It was no longer liquid, but solid like ice. One of the 6 great pure waters in the world, the extremely cold Xianming pure water. Yu Wanfeng's palms separated again, and the Xianming pure water in front of him suddenly expanded, sweeping towards Miao Shihao. In an instant, the world in front of him turned ice blue. This Xianming pure water could even freeze space. Being surrounded by it, Miao Shihao could not even break through space to escape. That's why I, Brother Shihao, hate the cold. Miao Shihao sighed softly, his right hand still forming a orchid shape, and pointed at the Xianming pure water in front of him. A pure white flower appeared in front of the Xianming pure water. It had a total of 4 petals in the shape of a cross, and the pure white petals flashed with a pink splendor. When this delicate flower landed on the Xianming pure water, its petals suddenly scattered, and an extremely resplendent splendor spread out in front of everyone. An instant of beauty, and an instant of eternity. From the moment the flower bloomed to the moment it fell, it was only a short moment. It was like a meteor streaking across the sky, but it bloomed with the most dazzling splendor. At this instant, the ice blue color of the Xianming pure water disappeared, and the entire sand continent city was filled with a pinkish white light. The light came quickly, and disappeared just as quickly. When the pinkish white light dissipated, the flower had already disappeared, and along with it, Yu Wanfeng's aggressive Xianming pure water also disappeared. Adumbara. Yu Wanfeng looked at Miao Shihao and said through gritted teeth. Miao Shihao smiled and didn't reply. She looked at the sky in the distance and said, there are so many people here today. Lin Feng also looked into the distance. There, an extremely condensed sword aura broke through the sky and arrived in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the sword aura was already in front of everyone. The sword aura was only 3 feet long, but the brilliant sword intent it contained was 1,000 times more powerful than the sword array formed by White Reel and the other 3. That sword intent was like a path that led to the heavens. It overcame all difficulties and cut through brambles and thorns all the way up to the 9 heavens. When it arrived in front of Lin Feng and the others, the sword aura that was 3 feet long spread out and immediately turned into a path of clear light, spreading in the air. There was a group of people standing on the path of clear light. The person at the front looked like a middle-aged man. He was wearing an azure robe and the blue silk sash around his waist was fluttering in the wind. He was extremely charming. White Reel and the others immediately turned pale when they saw the middle-aged man. Perfected cultivator Tatian, Yang Tonghui. Yang Tonghui arrived at the scene and didn't say anything. He reached out and grabbed Fu Shua, who was lying on the ground. Seeing Yang Tonghui, Fu Shua's body immediately trembled like a sieve. Moss. Master, where's the 9th grade heaven-reaching grass? Yang Tonghui didn't waste any time and went straight to the point. Fu Shua trembled and pointed at the tiny thing who was already standing behind Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled. Your disciple stole the spirit medicine and was going to give it to the sword sect. My disciple found out by chance, so he stole the spirit medicine. It's time to return it to its rightful owner. He turned around and looked at the tiny thing. Although the tiny thing didn't want to, he didn't dare to act like a spoiled child in front of his master. He had no choice but to give the 9th grade heaven-reaching grass to Qin Fan. The tiny thing's heart was bleeding. I should have eaten some of it first. Yang Tonghui took the 9th grade heaven-reaching grass and was obviously relieved. Thank you, my friend. May I know your name? Lin Feng smiled and said, I'm the master of the Xian sect, Lin Feng. Yang Tonghui nodded. I'll greet you later. He turned to look at White Reel and the others, and his brows immediately furrowed. White Reel felt bitter. He cupped his fists and said, Perfected cultivator Tatian, please understand. We've only just learned about this. We're both members of the 9 Heavenly Sword Alliance. How could Mount Shu allow a disciple who betrayed an ally to stay? Yang Tonghui nodded and said indifferently, That's great. White Real and the others could only grit their teeth and swallow it down. In the Sand Continent City, they were already the people with the highest cultivation in Mount Shu Sword Sect. Even if they wanted to settle the score, they had to first contact the sect's Yuanying stage ancestors. Let's go. White Real and the others exchanged glances and were about to leave. As for Fu Shua, his master had caught him in the act, so he had to give up. Once they turned around, Lin Feng's voice came from behind. Do you think you can leave after bullying my disciple? Chapter 188. You bullied my disciple, and you want to leave just like that? Lin Feng looked calmly at White Real and the others below. The pudgy elder sneered. You want to keep us here? There are tens of thousands of sword cultivators in Shushan. One sword for each of us, and you will be reduced to dregs. Lin Feng was not angry when he heard this. He smiled slightly, stretched out his right hand, and spread his fingers. Surging purple qi suddenly spewed out from Lin Feng's right hand, enveloping White Real and the other Shushan sword cultivators. How dare you! White Real and the others shouted angrily. They all struck out with their swords, trying to break through Lin Feng's purple qi. But the purple qi formed an independent space, completely isolating them from the real world outside. The Shushan sword cultivators were in a trance. The next moment, they found that the sky above their heads, the clouds, the ground under their feet, and the flowing water were all purple. It was as if they were in a whole new world. In the distant sky, a purple sun was slowly rising, sprinkling purple sunlight on them. When it fell on them, it was even warm. White Real was shocked. He turned his head to look for his companions, but found that the others who had been around him had all disappeared. It was as if he was the only one left in the whole world. Not only White Real, but all the Shushan sword cultivators found themselves alone, trapped in a completely unknown purple world. In the real world outside, whether it was Yang Tonghui and the people of the Heavenly Sword sect behind him, or the Yu family disciples led by Yuan Feng, they all looked at Lin Feng in shock. Lin Feng stood calmly in the void. Below him was a purple ball of air in the shape of a cube. It was square and locked on the ground, trapping the people of Shushan sword sect inside. The interior of the purple cube was divided into independent small spaces, and each space contained a Shushan sword cultivator. Although they were looking in from the outside, Yang Tonghui, Yuan Feng, and the others could see that each independent small space was a separate world. Within the space, there were mountains, rivers, breezes, suns, moons, and everything else. Forming a world of his own, creating all things. Who is this person? How can he use such a mystique? Yuan Feng was bewildered in his heart. Lin Feng's spell did not display any astonishing and vigorous mana. But his control of the mysteries of space and his understanding of the creation of all things made Yuan Feng, a veteran Yuanying cultivator, feel inferior. Yang Tonghui stared at Lin Feng, also lost in thought. The master of the Xianmen sect, Lin Feng. Looks like he's a rogue cultivator. He's been living in seclusion for a long time, but recently, he's thinking of making a move. He's preparing to establish his own sect and leave behind his legacy. Lin Feng looked at the independent space world constructed by the purple energy, also secretly nodding his head in his heart. As expected, this spell can only be truly perfected after I advance to the middle stage of Aura's core. Small World of the Heavens, the fourth spell that Lin Feng comprehended from the 8 trigrams book of the Great Tao of the Heavens. Using one's own mana to isolate space, forming a world of its own and giving birth to all things. In this world, Lin Feng was the master. It was fine if the enemy was not sucked in. As long as they were trapped in the heavens' small world, even the Yuanying cultivators could only be at the mercy of Lin Feng. The primordial spirit ox and some of the Yuanying old monsters with powerful spiritual power could escape the suction of the heavens' small world. Even if they were trapped in the world, they could quickly break free. But this kind of ability was obviously not possessed by White Real and the others. Soon, they discovered something that made them even more frightened. How can my spiritual power be suppressed to the level of foundation establishment? The short and fat elder suddenly exclaimed. He discovered the changes in his body. In Lin Feng's heaven's small world, his spiritual power and cultivation level were all restricted to the foundation establishment. While the short and fat elder was bewildered, the world in front of him suddenly flashed, and a figure also entered this world. A child who was only around 10 years old was wearing purple clothes. His arms were bared as he chuckled at him. It was precisely the little guy. Lin Feng's voice sounded in the purple space. It was as mighty as the sky and everywhere. With my cultivation level and identity, it would seem that I am bullying you. But you have bullied my disciple, so you must be taught a lesson. I always talk about fairness. Just now, you were 4 against 1. With the cultivation level of golden elixir period, you bullied my disciple with the cultivation level of foundation establishment. Do you feel happy? Now that you are all in the foundation establishment stage, let's fight again. Let's see whether your Shu Mountain Sword Dao is sharp or my Xian Men Dao is profound. The short and fat elder trembled with anger. You dare to humiliate my Shu Mountain like this. Before he finished speaking, a strong wind blew in front of him. Xiao Budian had already come to his side and said with a smile, "Short man, what are you paying attention to?" Dodging a punch from Xiao Budian, the short and fat elder was so angry that his face turned red. This brat has a peak golden elixir tiger soul essence. How can I fight him? Xiao Budian said with a smile, "So this is what you are afraid of. Don't worry, since you are also in the foundation establishment stage, I won't use the tiger soul golden plate." He looked up and down at the short and fat elder with a smile. "If you are still afraid, I will let you make the first move." The short and fat elder was stunned. His face had already turned from red to green, but he was relieved. So what if we are in the same cultivation level? My Shu Mountain is the #1 Sword Dao holy land in the world. I have practiced the sword for half of my life, and it is far better than your heretical methods. Thinking of this, the short and fat elder shouted, "Quick!" The long sword at his waist was unsheathed, and turned into an incomparably overbearing cold sword light, directly chopping towards Xiao Budian. The sword light was dazzling and cold. Every ray of light it emitted was an invincible sword aura. Shu Mountain's Shaoshang sword. The short and stout elder looked at the 1-foot-long sword aura, but his heart was incomparably bitter. I worked so hard to cultivate the 10 feet of cold sword aura, but now there's only 1 feet of cold left. Just who is this Lin Feng? No matter how depressed his heart was, the short and fat elder still pulled himself together, and urged the Shaoshang sword to chop towards Xiao Budian. The little guy laughed mischievously. He raised both of his hands, and the vigorous and tyrannical power of wind and lightning continuously circulated. It transformed into a whirlpool completely formed from wind and lightning, smashing towards the opponent's Shaoshang sword. The short and fat elder's face instantly changed. Even if he was still in the golden elixir period, he still had to be careful in dealing with this limitless wind and thunder technique of the little guy. Now that his magic power had been suppressed to the foundation establishment stage by Lin Feng, he was simply not Xiao Budian's opponent. This was too unfair. This was the only thought in the short and fat elder's mind. He was clearly only at the middle foundation establishment stage, so how could he create an attack that could endanger a golden elixir period cultivator? The Shaoshang sword was indeed tyrannical and incisive. Its edge was incomparably sharp, but right now it only had the strength of a zhang. Facing the little guy's limitless wind and thunder that was pushed to its limit, it was like a sharp, yet only 2 fingers wide and a few centimeters thick longsword directly colliding with a large iron hammer that weighed over 10 tons. The sword was indeed a peerless treasure sword, it could even cut apart the edge of the large hammer. But this did not change the huge difference between it and the large hammer. The final result had already been decided, the sword would be smashed into pieces by the large hammer. Outside the purple world, Yang Tonghui and Yuan Feng saw this scene, and their expressions became serious. When they looked at Lin Feng again, their gazes became much more serious. A world that was formed from heaven and earth could easily suppress the magic power of an enemy within the small world, but it could not be suppressed all the way. Instead, it was precisely controlled to the peak of the late Foundation establishment stage, and was only a step away from forming the golden elixir. This kind of control showed that Lin Feng had almost absolute control over this independent small world that he had created. With such a divine ability, unless one's cultivation was much higher than Lin Feng's, once they were trapped in the small world, it would be very difficult for them to resist. The problem was that they could not see through Lin Feng's level of cultivation. The more unknown, the more terrifying it was. Yuan Feng stared closely at the short and fat elder of Shushan in the small world. Shushan was one of the 3 holy lands, and the Tao techniques that they passed down were definitely the best in the divine land. The Shao Shang sword was also one of Shushan's signature divine abilities, the 6 meridian sword, and was even more famous for its fierce and tyrannical strength. Logically speaking, as a sword cultivator who was good at fighting and killing, the short and fat elder's battle strength should be very few among cultivators of the same level as him. At least, Yuan Feng asked himself, if he fought with a Shushan ancestor who was also at the early Yuanying stage like him, then he would most likely be at a disadvantage. And this was under the condition that he had cultivated the Xianming true water, and his strength far surpassed his peers. But even so, this short and fat elder had no room to fight back, and was defeated by the little guy. Even if his cultivation and magic power were suppressed, he was still at the peak of Foundation establishment, and the little guy was only at the middle stage of Foundation establishment. Just thinking about the gap between them made Yuanfeng's heart turn cold. At this moment, he looked at Lin Feng again, and his mood couldn't help but become even heavier. He turned around and fiercely glared at the red-robed youth who complained to him. The red-robed youth was staring blankly at Lin Feng, and his mind was in chaos. When he noticed Yuanfeng's gaze, it was as if a bucket of ice water had been poured over his head in June, and he almost fell to the ground. Yuan Feng looked at Lin Feng, and his heart was at a loss. He wanted to say a few harsh words, but in the end, the words that came out of his mouth changed. "It's a misunderstanding, I've disturbed you." Finished speaking, he waved his hand, and the ice-blue cloud swept up the group of Yu family disciples and red mist sect cultivators, and instantly left. Lin Feng smiled in his heart. "Very good, when it's time for the auction, there's another actor, and this one came to me crying and shouting to be in my big show." His expression did not change, and he calculated in his heart, "It's about time to speak." Sure enough, Yang Tonghui looked at the people of Mount Shu Sword Sect in the small world of the heavens, and after a moment of silence, he cupped his hands towards Lin Feng. "Lin Sect leader, they don't know the severity of the situation, and offended your disciple, so they should be punished, but I think they should also be taught a lesson, and I hope that you will be lenient." He paused, flipped his hand, and took out a porcelain bottle. "Here are 7 heaven-connecting pills, treat it as something for your disciple to calm down. I hope that sect leader Lin will be magnanimous and let them go." Lin Feng said in his heart, "I knew you would come out and be the good guy, and I was waiting for you. Even if you didn't speak, I would still be reluctant to give up these good actors." Chapter 189. If you don't say it, I can't bear to part with these good actors. Lin Feng smiled inwardly. He pointed with his finger and retracted the spiritual art of the lesser worlds. He said indifferently, "Shushan is unworthy of the leader of the 9 Heavens Sword League to allow their disciples to run amok like this." Yang Tonghui's eyes flashed. He had clearly captured the hidden message in Lin Feng's words. He was the leader of the 9 Heavens Sword League, not one of the 3 holy lands. It's hard to avoid the existence of withered leaves and branches. I believe that the seniors of Shushan will not allow anyone to run amok and ruin the sect's reputation, Yang Tonghui said with a smile, looking down at the people of Shushan below. White Real and the others had just escaped from the lesser worlds. They had been molested by Lin Feng, and even the most arrogant, stout elder had lost his spirit. Facing Yang Tonghui now, the prestige of their sect was no longer a psychological advantage. During the Golden Elixir period, they had the upper hand when facing the Yuanying ancestors. They dared not say anything in the face of Yang Tonghui's sarcasm. Lin Feng nodded and said to Yang Tonghui, "Since this matter is over, I will take my leave." Yang Tonghui asked, "Is sect leader Lin also here to participate in the vast Sea Dharma assembly?" "Yes." Lin Feng answered frankly. Yang Tonghui thought for a while and then said with a smile, "Will sect leader Lin also participate in the auction held by the Trade Pavilion in 3 days?" Lin Feng's thoughts spun like lightning, his mind constantly calculating. He suddenly thought that maybe he can borrow Yang Tonghui to make his plan even more perfect. Thinking of this, Lin Feng said with a smile, "This is my first time participating. I wonder if there are any requirements or restrictions for participating in the auction." Hearing this, Miao Shihao, who had been silent and seemed to be in a daze, finally came to his senses and looked at Lin Feng. Lin Feng's eyes met his, but he said nothing. Miao Shihao pursed his lips and smiled. He lowered his head and said nothing. On the other side, Yang Tonghui smiled and introduced the requirements of the auction to Lin Feng. He knew that the 3 requirements were exactly the same as what Miao Shihao had said. Lin Feng pondered and said, "Introducer." Yang Tonghui turned to look at Miao Shihao. He felt that Miao Shihao was on the same side as Lin Feng. Miao Shihao smiled and said, "Don't look at me, perfected cultivator Tatian. Even though I'm with sect master Lin, unfortunately, I've already promised to introduce another friend to this auction." Yang Tonghui nodded and looked at Lin Feng with a smile. "If sect master Lin doesn't mind, I can be your introducer." Lin Feng let out a sigh of relief. "Fellow Taoist, you've done me a great favor by helping me. How could I possibly turn my back on you?" Yang Tonghui smiled and shook his head, not saying a word. If you want to talk about help, it's Lin Feng who helped him a lot. Putting aside the matter of getting the 9th level heaven-reaching grass, Lin Feng was willing to let the cultivators of Mount Shu go for his sake, which was equivalent to humiliating the Mount Shu sword sect and boosting the reputation of the heavenly sword sect. In a sense, this favor was as useful as getting the 9th level heaven-reaching grass back. Even though Yang Tonghui had paid the price of 7 heaven-reaching pills, it was negligible compared to what he had gained. Lin Feng waved Xiao Budian and Yu Hongyan to his side and nodded at Yang Tonghui. "Thank you, fellow cultivator. See you in 3 days." After saying goodbye to Yang Tonghui and the other cultivators of the Heavenly Sword sect, Lin Feng left with Xiao Budian and Yu Hongyan with Miao Shihao. When they were far away, Miao Shihao used his spiritual power to send a laugh. "You, what tricks are you up to now?" Lin Feng smiled. In his heart, he was still very grateful that Miao Shihao had cooperated with him in putting on a good show in front of Yang Tonghui. Just as he was about to speak, Miao Shihao suddenly shook his head like a drum. "Wait, don't say it." His eyes shone brightly as he chuckled and said, "There's no point in saying it out loud. Let me see what kind of tricks you're playing. You're really interesting. I didn't make a mistake following you." Lin Feng was speechless, and his mouth twitched. He really wanted to tell Miao Shihao that his last words were too ambiguous. But thinking that even if he said it, Miao Shihao would probably not take it to heart, Lin Feng could not help but laugh and shake his head. Miao Shihao insisted on going, and Lin Feng did not refuse. But for him to return to Miao Shihao's room, that was impossible. They found a place to stay in the Sand Continent City, and sent a message to Xiao Yan and Zhu Yi, telling them to hurry back and meet up. After the group settled down, Lin Feng chased Miao Shihao out of his room with an absolutely resolute and unyielding attitude, and then left Xiao Budian behind. Xiao Budian was looking at Lin Feng with a pitiful expression. "Master." How could Lin Feng not know that this stinking brat could not bear to let the 9th heaven connecting grass that was already in his mouth grow wings and fly away? "Stop pretending. Do you think Master doesn't know you?" Lin Feng was angry and amused at the same time. Xiao Budian's big black eyes turned, and a smile appeared on his face. Hee hee, master, it's really a pity. Lin Feng laughed. Silly brat, then take it as an advance investment. We can earn back even more in the future. He flipped his palm, and took out the Heaven Flower 9-heart lotus. Moreover, I won't let you down. This thing belongs to you alone. Xiao Budian was overjoyed. He carefully looked at the green lotus in Lin Feng's hand, and felt the abundant spirit energy contained in the 9 lotus seeds. Xiao Budian's expression suddenly froze. Master, my spirit platform. Without saying much, Xiao Budian immediately sat cross-legged on the ground. His hands formed seals, and he silently used the 8 trigrams Heaven's Great Way scripture. Lin Feng scanned with his divine sense, and found that within Xiao Budian's aura C, the 6th spirit platform that had already gradually formed a foundation was rapidly rising from the ground. Powerful spirit energy lingered around, and the spirit platform was built layer by layer, rising high into the sky. Finally, it became a 9-story high spirit platform. Within Xiao Budian's body, there was a 6th first-grade spirit platform. Lin Feng nodded, and said, Tianhao, concentrate, don't be distracted. He raised his palm, and the Heaven Flower 9-heart lotus flew into the air, and landed on top of Xiao Budian's head. The lotus's light shone brightly, and turned into a ray of 7-colored light. It entered Xiao Budian's body from the top of his head. Xiao Budian's body trembled, and then he calmed down. He guided the Heaven Flower 9-heart lotus's spirit energy essence into his own aura C. Once the clear energy entered Xiao Budian's aura C, it instantly separated, and 9 7-colored specks of light flew out. They were precisely the magic power essence of those 9 lotus seeds. These 9 7-colored specks of light temporarily floated above Xiao Budian's aura C, and the clear energy was injected into it. Xiao Budian's aura C immediately rippled with clear light, and began to roll, as if it was boiling. Then, he saw the 7th, 8th, and 9th spirit platforms also soar into the sky, and were cast into shape. Xiao Budian's entire body's magic power soared, and the 9 spirit platforms were all first grade. At the same time, the 9 first-grade spirit platforms that were originally arranged in a straight line within Xiao Budian's aura C suddenly underwent a new change. Lin Feng's pupils slightly contracted, and he saw that the positions of the 9 spirit platforms within Xiao Budian's aura C had also changed. The spirit platforms that were supposed to be fixed in place within Xiao Budian's aura C actually began to move, forming 3 circles inside and outside. The outermost circle had 4 spirit platforms standing in the east, west, north, and south directions, while the middle circle had 4 spirit platforms standing in the southeast, southwest, northeast, and northwest directions. In the center of the innermost circle, stood the last remaining spirit platform. Lin Feng, who had been paying close attention to the changes, immediately saw the clues. This shape is exactly the arrangement of the 9 lotus seeds on the Heaven Flower 9-heart lotus. Xiao Budian's 9 spirit platforms stood still, and above Xiao Budian's aura C, the 9 7-colored specks of light formed by the lotus seeds also moved at this time. One by one, they landed on Xiao Budian's 9 spirit platforms. On each of Xiao Budian's spirit platforms, there was a shadow, and it was precisely the shadow of a pill cauldron. Xiao Budian's cultivation realm had always increased the fastest among all the disciples under Lin Feng's tutelage, and he had long activated his heaven's perception. If not for the changes happening within his body, and the need to erect 9 spirit platforms, he could actually condense the pill cauldron before Xiao Yan and Zhu Yi, and advance to the late stage of foundation establishment. Now that all 9 spirit platforms had been successfully constructed, he immediately stepped into the cauldron setting stage, and had to condense the pill cauldron as well. On the spirit platforms in Xiao Budian's aura C, each pill cauldron shadow was matched with a lotus seed, and the shadow immediately became much more condensed. Condensing 9 pill cauldrons at once, even if I have enough transcendence energy, my mind will be extremely tired, and this is too tiring. Lin Feng took a look, and knew what to do. He extended a finger, and a strand of purple gas was injected into Xiao Budian's body. The more vigorous the transcendence energy, the easier it was to condense the pill cauldron. The faster the pill cauldron could be condensed, the less pressure on the mind. At this moment, Xiao Budian was completely focused on circulating his transcendence energy, and naturally guided the purple gas that Lin Feng sent over into his own aura sea. The strand of purple gas was divided into 9, and was evenly distributed to the 9 pill cauldrons. Within Xiao Budian's 9 spirit platforms, the majestic transcendence energy was completely injected into each pill cauldron shadow. Boom! Xiao Budian opened his eyes abruptly, and his eyes were filled with extraordinary splendor, and there were 9 vague spots of light flashing. At this moment, the 9 pill cauldron shadows in his body completely turned from illusory into reality, and they became 9 truly condensed four-legged cauldrons. Xiao Budian stood up from the ground, and then turned towards Lin Feng, and kowtowed, "Master." Lin Feng smiled as he helped him up, but he was thinking to himself, 9 first-grade pill cauldrons? He still hasn't recovered the elegance of a supreme being. Could it be that he wants to accumulate strength, and undergo a one-time transformation when he forms the golden elixir? It was normal for 9 pill cauldrons to be erected on 9 spirit platforms, but it was impossible for 9 pill cauldrons to form 9 golden elixir beads. When a foundation establishment cultivator formed their core, they had to condense all their transcendence energy into the golden elixir. Xiao Budian's core would definitely be formed with 9 pill cauldrons as one. After saying a few warm words of encouragement to Xiao Budian, Lin Feng sent him out, and Lin Feng sat alone in the room. After pondering for a while, he took out a ring from his clothes. When Lin Feng's divine sense entered the ring, he saw that the little Taotai, Tunten, was still in its cute Lolita form, sitting by itself in the light prison, bored to death. Upon seeing Lin Feng arrive, Tunten wrinkled its little nose and snorted. It turned its back, and acted as if it was unwilling to pay any attention to Lin Feng. It was a pity that Lin Feng had already felt her pulse a long time ago. One sentence made the little guy impatiently turn around. "True Sun Fire, do you still want it?" Tunten suddenly turned around, and angrily shouted at the smiling Lin Feng, "You're too bad." Chapter 190. "You're so bad." Tunten yelled indignantly. Lin Feng secretly pursed his lips. "No matter how bad she is, she's still better than you being so unreliable. A lowly who can't forget to beat up her sweetheart and force herself on him." However, he naturally wouldn't get entangled with Tunten over such matters. He just smiled and said, "Do you still want the true Sunfire?" She swallowed and said eagerly, "Are you willing to give it to me?" "Of course." Lin Feng smiled like a fox preparing to steal a chicken. "It's not just the true Sunfire. I also have a way to help you rebuild your body and recover your strength." Tunten suddenly shivered, his face full of vigilance as he looked at Lin Feng. "What do you want?" Lin Feng smiled. "Nothing much. I've never said that I won't give you the true Sunfire, right? You didn't say anything, but you ran away without even looking back the last time." Tunten cursed inwardly while still looking warily at Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled. "The true Sunfire seed I had previously was modified. There's a limit to the increase in firepower. Even if I give it to you, you won't be able to use it. But now, I've found a way to increase the firepower of the true Sunfire. When I cultivate the real true Sunfire, I can naturally share some with you." Tunten asked curiously, "You have Shiha grass? This thing is almost extinct in Tianhuang vast mainland." Lin Feng sent a seed of Shiha grass in. Tunten didn't catch it with its hands. It opened its mouth and swallowed the seed. It smacked its lips. "It really is a seed of Shiha grass." She looked at Lin Feng in confusion. "Why are you suddenly so nice to me?" Lin Feng's smile was as warm as the sun in spring. "I've always been very nice to you. If you think I'm not nice, that's your illusion. Look at this." Lin Feng waved his sleeve and a black figure landed outside the light prison. It was half of the gunmetal Tiger King's corpse. Although it was already a broken corpse, it still shone with a dazzling metallic luster. It was filled with an indestructible power. In fact, if it wasn't for Lin Feng using the Two Realms Void technique to create the effect of cutting space, it wouldn't have been easy for him to split the tiger carcass into two. Tuntun's gaze fell on the gunmetal Tiger King's corpse, immediately unable to shift its eyes away. Saliva began to flow from its mouth as it said, "The remains of the gunmetal tiger clan." Furthermore, it's a Demon King level gunmetal tiger. Although it was only half a corpse, Tuntun believed that if he could devour it, he would be able to rebuild his body immediately. Although his strength would not be able to return to his peak, it should not be a problem for him to reach the peak of the Demon Commander stage, the peak Golden Elixir stage of the human race. The powerful innate abilities of the Taotai race made it so that even though she was a peak Demon Commander, she did not fear ordinary early Demon Kings or early Yuanying opponents. She couldn't do anything to him, and he couldn't kill her either. Lin Feng smiled and asked, "Do you like it?" Tuntun's eyes widened as it repeatedly nodded. "I like it, I like it, I like it, wait." She struggled to shift her gaze away from the remains of the gunmetal Tiger King. After a moment of hesitation, she said, "You're really willing to give it to me? Aren't you afraid that I will take revenge on you after I recover my strength?" Lin Feng looked at her with a faint smile. "Do you think you have the ability? If it was your father, the Taotai saint, who said this, it would be more likely." Tuntun unhappily patted the bars of the light prison. "What? I was also a demon king that had formed a demon nascent soul at my peak. I was stronger than this dead tiger." That's right, that's right." Lin Feng nonchalantly nodded. "Let's just say it, do you want it or not?" Tuntun blurted out, "Of course I want it." Lin Feng smiled and put away the gunmetal Tiger King's remains. Tuntun immediately became anxious. "Are you kidding me? I will naturally give it to you, but not now." Lin Feng casually said, "When the Shiha grass grows and I cultivate a large amount of Sun's true fire, I will give this dead tiger and the Sun's true fire to you. Just wait patiently. It won't take long." With that, Lin Feng's consciousness left the spatial ring, leaving Tuntun hopping around anxiously. This move shouldn't be in vain. It's just that when it will be effective depends on how the opponent moves. Lin Feng pondered. He pushed open the door and walked out. Helping Xiao Budian set up his spiritual platform and casting the cauldron took a lot of time. Today was the day the auction officially began. "Let's begin. Let's split into two." Lin Feng snapped his fingers. The god of war clone appeared beside him and then disappeared. Lin Feng raised his head and looked into the distance. A sword light flashed and stopped in front of Lin Feng. 3 figures appeared. The one in the lead was Yang Tonghui. Behind him were 2 golden elixir period cultivators from the Heavenly Sword sect. Yang Tonghui saw Lin Feng and smiled. "Sect leader Lin, are you ready?" Lin Feng nodded. "Thank you, fellow Taoist." With that, he called Xiao Budian and Yu Hongyan out and followed Yang Tonghui to the auction venue. Yang Tonghui's eyes flashed when he saw Xiao Budian. "In just a few days, you're already in the late stage of foundation establishment? Could it be that you've long reached a bottleneck and the previous battle helped you break through?" In front of Lin Feng, he naturally would not use his magic power to probe Xiao Budian's foundation. He could only see that Xiao Budian had formed a cauldron and advanced to the late stage of foundation establishment. If he knew that Xiao Budian actually had 9 spirit platforms and 9 cauldrons, his eyeballs would probably fall to the ground immediately. The group arrived at the center of Sand Continent City. Under Yang Tonghui's lead, they flew up into the sky. Lin Feng stared at the void above his head. So the Heavenly Trade Pavilion's auction venue is actually hidden in the void. That's quite a big deal. Sect leader Lin is indeed perceptive. Yang Tonghui nodded. The Heavenly Trade Pavilion's auction venue is actually a small grotto heaven that belongs to them. Usually, it's hidden in the void. It's only open to the public once every year for the vast ocean Dharma assembly. As he continued to fly upward, the void suddenly rippled like water, faintly revealing a colorful space. At the entrance of the void, a few cultivators appeared. The one in front had his clothes fluttering as if he was one with the void. He was a Yuanying cultivator. This person was obviously familiar with Yang Tonghui. The moment he saw him, he cupped his fists and said, "Zhenjuan Yang, long time no see. How have you been?" Yang Tonghui smiled. "Mr. Song, long time no see." He introduced to Lin Feng. "Sect leader Lin, this is Mr. Song Fu, one of the 3 managers of the Heavenly Trade Pavilion." Song Fu's eyes flashed as he looked at Lin Feng. "Is this Taoist sect leader Lin?" Lin Feng smiled in his heart. He checked the system. His current reputation in the northern foothills of the Kunlun Mountains has already reached 75, able to attract people in the area with a total potential talent value of 22 and above to take the initiative to come and take him as their master. Back then, Lin Feng's reputation in the southern region of the Great Hengduan mountain range had reached 70 because he killed the Gung-Metal Tiger King, a great demon king. Although he didn't kill the Yuanying cultivators in the previous battle, he had humiliated the Mount Shu Sword sect. The impact he had had was even greater than the Gung-Metal Tiger King. Song Fu saw Lin Feng's appearance and heard Yang Tonghui's address. He immediately guessed his identity. Lin Feng smiled. "Mr. Song, I'm sorry to disturb you." "You're welcome." Song Fu smiled and shook his head. Yang Tonghui said, "This is sect leader Lin's first time attending an auction at the Heavenly Trade Pavilion. I'm his introducer." Song Fu smiled and said, "Sorry for the poor customs. Please come in." Lin Feng brought the little guy and Yu Heng Yan into the small grotto heaven in the sky with Yang Tonghui and the others. The grotto heaven was like a vast galaxy with countless flashing light spots. Lin Feng looked carefully but realized he couldn't see through the light spots. "Is it covered by my Dharma power? I don't think my identity will be exposed if I attend the auction here." Lin Feng frowned. Then, an executive of the Heavenly Trade Pavilion came over and bowed to Yang Tonghui. "Greetings, perfected cultivator Tada. Your seat has been prepared." Yang Tonghui pointed at Lin Feng. "This is sect leader Lin. He's my guest." "Greetings, sect leader Lin." The deacon was well informed, and the recent happenings in the Sand Continent City, the Heavenly Trade Pavilion definitely had first-hand information. Towards the experts that had suddenly appeared in the city, they naturally had to be aware of them, and not inadvertently offend them. The executive said respectfully, "Since this is sect leader Lin's first time here, do you have any special requirements for your seat? Do you need to sit next to perfected cultivator Tada? Even though I can't detect it with my Dharma power, it seems that those who come here often have their own seats." Lin Feng smiled and looked at Yang Tonghui. "I'll have to trouble you for a while. I'll sit next to you." Yang Tonghui laughed and said, "Of course it's my wish, I don't dare to ask." The two laughed and flew to 2 flashing light spots under the guidance of the executive. The light spots had turned into a light ball the size of a mountain when they got closer. The executive took out his badge and the light went away, revealing what was inside. Lin Feng took a look and saw that they were 2 giant rocks, like 2 small planets in 2 cosmic star fields. Yang Tonghui brought the 2 Heavenly Sword sect cultivators and landed on one of the rocks. Lin Feng, Tiny Thing, and Yu Heng Yan naturally landed on the other. There were already tables and chairs set up on the rocks, but other than that, it looked desolate. The executive smiled apologetically. "The environment is rough. Please forgive us, sect leader Lin." Lin Feng saw that Yang Tonghui's side was the same and knew that all the seats were the same. He didn't mind and smiled. "It's fine. I'm here to experience the grand occasion of the vast ocean Dharma assembly. A little superficial enjoyment is not important." After sitting down, Lin Feng looked around and saw that he was in a field of light spots. They formed a big ring and surrounded a black hole-like existence in the middle of the void. Yang Tonghui said through Dharma power, the official auction will start in 2 hours. Before that, it's time for everyone to exchange Dao techniques and supernatural powers. Some treasures will also be traded here. Lin Feng nodded and calmed his heart to sense. He immediately sensed that countless spiritual wills were communicating in the starry sky of the Sea of Light. Chapter 191. Lin Feng sat on his seat. Silently, he sensed the countless spiritual thoughts in the space. This kind of communication was mostly messy and disorderly. It happened between rogue cultivators, but they had to borrow the light around the small planet in the heavenly trade pavilion's grotto heaven. It could block others from probing with their spiritual energy and prevent their identity and cultivation from being exposed. Trading and displaying were not one-on-one. Instead, many divine wills interweaved together to display the Dao techniques or divine abilities or treasures that they wanted to trade. At the same time, there were also many people who were interested in a Dao technique or a treasure. These spiritual thoughts gathered together and turned into a small consciousness space. Unless someone spoke, because of the light around the small planet, Lin Feng couldn't distinguish the origin of each spiritual thought. But he didn't have the intention to kill and rob, so he was happy to relax. He chose a consciousness space with the most spiritual thoughts and entered it. What entered his eyes was a vast expanse of whiteness. In the center of the white light, there was a rock. The surface of the rock was dug out, and in the pit was a Buddha statue. The Buddha statue sat on a lotus and a full moon. Below it was a throne carried by 8 peacocks. Its right hand held a lotus and its left hand held a bell. There was no sadness or joy on its face. Its entire body was bright and full of power. Lin Feng's heart moved. This is Amitabha. At this moment, in the consciousness space, an old voice said, "This is a Buddha statue passed down from the Great Thunderclap Temple. It contains the true meaning of Amitabha's Dharma. It is a pity that I am not fated with Buddha and cannot comprehend its mysteries. I will take it out today. There is no need to bid, just set the price at 80 yellow talisman coins. If anyone wants it, they can take it. If there is more than one person who wants it, I will not increase the price. Whoever can resonate with the Buddha statue can take it away." Someone said, "I can indeed feel a trace of Buddha nature from the Buddha statue. But that is all. There is no Buddha power, Dharma, nothing. 80 yellow talismans is too high." The old voice said lightly, 80 yellow talismans, no bargaining. If no one wants it, I will keep it for myself. Silently, Lin Feng also observed the Buddha statue. After a long time, he shook his head regretfully. This Buddha statue indeed had the pure Buddhist nature of incense. It should be a genuine product of the Big Layin Temple. However, it did not contain any mana or spiritual energy fluctuation. In this way, there naturally wouldn't be any Dao techniques or divine abilities left within. However, when Lin Feng looked at this Buddha statue, he felt a little uneasy. The old man selling the Buddha statues was very stubborn. He did not lower the price at all, and many people backed off. Those who did not hold any hope for the auction and participated in the private transactions were mostly itinerant cultivators. To put it bluntly, they were here to pick up scraps. Although there were many cultivators of the golden elixir period among them, 80 yellow talismans was still a huge sum of money for them. Talisman money was a talisman. When a cultivator refined a talisman, it was fine if it was a low-grade talisman, but a talisman that was at the same level of one's cultivation couldn't be casually drawn, and it required a large amount of time and energy. Not to mention the talisman paper and talisman ink were an expense. Looking at these rogue cultivators bargaining, Lin Feng thought to himself. The foundation of a large sect was often reflected in some small aspects. For example, Large sects like the Shu Mountain Sword Sect, the Yu Clan, and the Heavenly Sword Sect, their attention was focused on the auction that was going to be held later. For them, 80 yellow talismans might not even be considered as a hair from 9 oxen. The disciples of these sects did not need to suffer untold hardships like these rogue cultivators, trying to pick up scraps to exchange for good things, or selling treasures to earn talisman money and cultivation resources. The disciples of large sects only needed to squat in their cave abodes and cultivate in peace. The mountain caves of large sects were all blessed lands with relatively abundant spiritual qi, and there was also a sufficient supply of spirit pills and spiritual medicines. It was absolutely guaranteed to be sufficient. And these cultivators who mingled here were all old foxes who had cultivated for decades. Perhaps they had some savings, but they ran around every day, relying on their own hands to search for cultivation resources, wasting a lot of time in vain. They cultivated with twice the effort for half the result. There was no lack of experts among the rogue cultivators, and there were even some primordial spirit cultivators who lived freely in the mortal world. However, if a rogue cultivator wanted to live a comfortable life, he or she had to at least be at Miao Shihao's level. If a rogue cultivator with a low cultivation did not have a good master, his or her life would be very difficult. My sect still has a long way to go. Lin Feng thought to himself. At this moment, the sale of the Buddha statue finally came to an end. An unknown rogue cultivator finally made up his mind and paid 80 yellow talismans to buy the Buddha statue. A giant red hand suddenly reached out from the divine sense space and grabbed the Buddha statue at the center of the boulder, before disappearing. Since the Buddha statue had found a buyer, the divine sense space naturally dispersed. Lin Feng's consciousness also retreated from the divine sense space. Why do I feel like I've missed something? Frowning, Lin Feng communicated with the divine god of battle clone. Wait at the entrance, see if anyone is coming out from the heavenly merchant pavilion's cave. After receiving Lin Feng's message, the divine god of battle clone paused for a moment. He glanced at the cave that was right in front of him and transmitted his voice to Miao Shihao. Wait for a moment. Miao Shihao had just greeted the manager of the heavenly merchant pavilion, Song Fu, who was guarding the entrance. His eyes flickered as he stopped in his tracks and chatted with Song Fu. At the same time, he transmitted his voice to Song Fu. What are you up to this time? It's hard to say what we'll find now. Let's wait and see. The divine god of battle clone replied. Song Fu glanced at the divine god of battle clone in a seemingly unintentional manner, before continuing to chat with Miao Shihao as if nothing had happened. The divine god of battle clone had returned to his initial appearance of a heavy armor. He covered himself up tightly and even put on the helmet that he was wearing before. His attention was currently focused on the entrance of the cave. Song Fu was mainly there to welcome the guests. Apart from him, a few people were also coming out from the cave. They were all rogue cultivators who had learned something from their private conversations. It should be him. The divine god of battle clone's heart skipped a beat as he stared at an old man who had just come out from the cave. The old man was walking in the air with a powerful aura. He was a cultivator in the early stage of the golden elixir realm. He came out from the cave and casually tossed a boulder into the air. Coincidentally, this rock fell in the air in front of Zhu Yi and continued to fall. Zhu Yi almost subconsciously reached out his transcendence energy to catch the falling rock. The divine god of battle clone glanced at Zhu Yi. Zhu Yi inspected the boulder before handing it to the divine god of battle clone and said, Master, there's something strange about the hole in the middle of this boulder. It's slightly tainted with the aura of the Buddha statue. The divine god of battle clone shared the same mind as Lin Feng, thus they were able to communicate with each other. He immediately recognized that it was the boulder that was used to store the Buddha statue. The hole in the middle of the boulder was where the Buddha statue was placed. Now that the Buddha statue had been taken away, only a deep pit was left. The divine god of battle clone inspected the surface of the pit and discovered some tiny runes, which seemed to have been left there for a long time. These runes look a little strange. Having this thought, the divine god of battle clone turned around and glanced at Zhu Yi. I'm afraid there's something fishy going on here. As the auction was about to begin, the divine god of battle clone did not waste any time. He brought Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and Miao Shihao into the cave. Miao Shihao had his own seat in the Skytrade Pavilion. The divine god of battle clone brought Xiao Yan and Zhu Yi to a seat near him. Lin Feng had learned the whole story through the divine god of battle clone. He mumbled in his heart, Xiao Yi's luck is not just for show. There must be something special about the boulder that she tripped over. As he was immersed in his thoughts, the auction had officially begun. The entrance of the small cave controlled by the Skytrade Pavilion closed and disappeared into the rift. The center of the cave was surrounded by countless light dots. The place resembling a black hole suddenly glowed and turned into a giant light orb like a star. A figure slowly walked out from the light orb. It was one of the managers of the Skytrade Pavilion, the Yuanying realm cultivator Song Fu. Everyone, today is the grandest auction held by the Skytrade Pavilion every year. Thank you for coming. While speaking, Song Fu clapped his hands softly. A blue orb floated out from the light orb behind him. An abundant amount of water-type chi was emitted from the orb like an ocean. However, its aura was slightly ferocious and violent. The aura felt more like the aura of a beast than the chi of the heavens and earth, or the aura of a human cultivator. Song Fu introduced, this is the beast core of a scarlet-eyed blue sea serpent that has reached the peak of the martial beast realm. This kind of water-type beast is extremely hot-tempered, and will fight its enemies with its life. It's extremely difficult to obtain its beast core. This beast core has a rich and pure water-type chi. Most importantly, it's in perfect condition, without any flaws or damage. It's quite rare. The buyers on the glowing rocks in the air nodded slightly. A scarlet-eyed blue sea serpent that was at the peak of the martial beast realm, about to reach the nascent soul realm and reach the emperor beast realm. At this level, even if it was killed, it would be in a terrible state. It was quite difficult to preserve the beast core without any damage. Even if the progenitor of the Yuanying realm was able to kill it, there was no guarantee that the beast core would not be damaged. The price of the beast core was naturally higher. The starting price was 80 green talismans. Compared to the Buddha statues sold by loose cultivators, the price was at least 10 times higher. Furthermore, this was only the starting price. The final transaction price could easily multiply by several times. If someone got angry over the price, they would end up paying an astronomical price. Lin Feng was not interested in the beast core. He had no use for it, and not many of his disciples had any use for it either. Compared to the beast core, Lin Feng was more interested in studying the rock that was related to the Buddha statue of Amitabha Buddha. Lin Feng was very interested in the runes on the rocks. Lin Feng's mind was connected to the divine god of battle's clone. His mind delved into the runes on the rocks. He carefully focused his mind to sense the runes on the rocks. He could vaguely sense that the runes seemed to form a portrait. The portrait depicted a Buddha sitting in the air, surrounded by countless suns, moons, and stars. It was as if all the light in the world was focused on the Buddha. Chapter 192. Infinite Light Buddha. Lin Feng understood and carefully tried to figure out the concept of power displayed by this Buddha. When his mind had just established a connection with the Buddha, he didn't feel anything unusual. It was just that his vision was filled with a vast expanse of whiteness that made him dizzy. After carefully savoring it, Lin Feng immediately discovered the profoundness within. In this vast expanse of whiteness, there was nothing else other than light. Lin Feng felt as if he had stepped into a world that only had light. Pure, extreme light. It repels everything else, leaving only light here. The essence of light was not warmth, nor was it illuminating all living things. It was absolute purity that repelled everything else. Lin Feng's heart trembled. He suddenly realized that compared to this world that only had light, wasn't he also an existence like a foreign object? Just as this thought crossed his mind, Lin Feng immediately felt the surrounding white radiance pressing towards him. There was no burning pain, nor was there any sharp stinging pain. It just kept repelling Lin Feng. In this world, there was no room for anything other than light. Despite such a vast amount of radiance, Lin Feng didn't feel the slightest bit of warmth. This light was pure and primitive, without any warmth or heat. It was just the purest light. It was boundless and majestic. He couldn't feel any sharp killing intent or hostility from it, but it was filled with unstoppable, unparalleled power. It was like Mount Tai crushing an egg, easily crushing the other party until not even dust was left. In Lin Feng's mind, all sorts of negative emotions kept surging and appearing. I shouldn't exist here in the first place. It's normal for me to be repelled. Without my existence, this place is perfect. It's a mistake for me to come here, I can't hold on anymore. Even if I can hold on for a while, I'll soon collapse. I might as well not waste my energy. There's no hope at all sorts of messy thoughts invaded Lin Feng's will. In this place, it was more of a suppression on one's mind, causing one to unconsciously feel lost and defeated. Lin Feng's lucid mind that has already seen the slightest hint, under the attack of this endless negative thought he was on the verge of collapse. I've really struck it rich this time. Lin Feng wasn't shocked, but delighted instead. Because he was absolutely sure that there was only one possibility for a force to exert such intense pressure on him. One of the supreme Buddhist scriptures of the Great Thunderclap Monastery, one of the 5 Direction Rulai Sutras. It was the Heaven Primal World's most extreme Tao of the Tao of Light, the Infinite Light Rulai Sutra. The words of the Buddha Sutra of Amitabha Light were not imprinted on the sutra, nor were they hidden in the Buddha statue. Instead, they were imprinted by the Buddha statue. This imprint illustrated the true essence of the Infinite Light Rulai Sutra. Lin Feng endured the repulsion of the boundless light. He did not resist, nor did he counterattack. He just stood there. His mind became more and more relaxed. Silently, he comprehended the profound meaning of the Dharma contained in the Infinite Light Rulai scripture. The teachings of Buddha emphasize the equality of all living beings. Everyone can become a Buddha. Silently, Lin Feng looked at the Buddha in the boundless light. He thought, a true Buddha isn't majestic, nor is it huge. Instead, it makes one feel as if they are looking at themselves from their previous lives. Radiating one's Buddha nature and Tao heart, understanding one's nature, understanding the origins of one's thousands of lifetimes, understanding the nature of one's heart. This is the Dharma. With this thought, the face of the Buddha suddenly became clear in the boundless light. His eyes were slightly closed and his expression was serene. However, he wasn't as majestic as the Buddha statues in some temples. Instead, he exuded an amiable and familiar aura. Lin Feng faintly smiled, his expression also becoming calm and peaceful, calmly saying, "Immeasurable light, immeasurable power, illuminate the world. I use immeasurable light to save the people of the world, proving great wisdom, great freedom." The boundless light that had been repelling him calmed down. Not only did it no longer repel Lin Feng, it even coexisted peacefully with him. At this moment, Lin Feng had completely merged with the boundless light. The boundless light had treated him as a part of itself. Lin Feng's consciousness withdrew from the pattern diagram of the rock. The body of the war god clone laughed loudly, pointing a finger at the center of Zhu Yi's brows. "Xiaoyi, calm your mind and carefully feel it." The profound meaning of the Dharma and the boundless power of light of the Infinite Light Rulai scripture were all imparted to Zhu Yi. Zhu Yi's body shuddered. His eyes glowed brightly. The way of a gentleman is to remain calm in the face of beauty, and to remain calm in the face of treasures. Zhu Yi quickly took a few deep breaths to calm his mind. As for the problem of his pill cauldron, Zhu Yi was naturally the clearest about it. There was an imbalance between light and darkness. There was only the path of darkness and no path of light. As a result, the the pill cauldron was only half completed. Now that he had obtained what he had been dreaming of, Zhu Yi almost lost his mind despite his composure. With such an unstable state of mind, it was impossible for him to comprehend the true meaning of the infinite light Rulai scripture. Zhu Yi sat with his legs crossed and closed his eyes. However, he was not comprehending the scripture. Instead, he was completely calming his mind. After he was completely calm, he began to comprehend the infinite light Rulai scripture that Lin Feng had imparted to him. In the beginning, the pressure that the boundless light brought to Zhu Yi was even greater than what Lin Feng had felt in the past. After all, Lin Feng had already formed the golden elixir. The sturdiness of his soul was far greater than Zhu Yi's. After a long time, Zhu Yi suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes shone with a dazzling light. The pill cauldron that originally only had 2 legs on his spirit platform suddenly shook. Countless rays of light condensed under the pill cauldron and gradually formed another 2 legs. Amidst the rumbling sound, Zhu Yi's pill cauldron finally evolved into 4 legs and stood heavily on his spirit platform. The 2 auras of light and darkness emerged at the same time. Right above Zhu Yi's pill cauldron, 2 cyclones, one black and one white, were merging with each other, faintly revealing the principles of yin and yang. The phenomenon above the pill cauldron was a sign that only the sovereign pill cauldron could have. In the past, when Lin Feng himself had formed the sovereign pill cauldron, there had been a burst of multicolored light and the changes of the primordial world. Zhu Yi could be considered a pioneer in the cultivation world of the great heaven primordial world by condensing the sovereign pill cauldron with a first-grade spirit platform. Lin Feng felt the changes in Zhu Yi's body and felt happy for him. Zhu Yi opened his eyes and stood up again. He respectfully bowed to Lin Feng. Disciple thanks Master. It's all thanks to Master's teachings that disciple can have such a good fortune. Lin Feng smiled and shook his head. This is the result of your hard work. Master doesn't dare to take credit for it. As I said before, in the future, on the path of cultivation, you must not slack off. Remember today's hard work. Zhu Yi nodded heavily. Disciple will always keep it in mind. Lin Feng continued, nourish your pill cauldron well. You should have felt it yourself. Before, you only had darkness and lacked light. The pill cauldron had a big flaw. But now, there is an excess of light and a weakening of darkness. The light and darkness are not balanced. Even with the sovereign pill cauldron, it will be difficult for you to form your core in the future. Zhu Yi said in a low voice, if you try to strengthen the darkness and it surpasses the light, it will still be imbalanced. You might even fall into an endless cycle of adding oil to the fire. I will temporarily suppress the light and make the 2 reach a balance. After I form my core, I will adjust it. Lin Feng nodded and smiled. Good, good, good. You can only gain if you give up something. Today, you take a step back so that you can take 2 steps forward tomorrow. If you can't be moved by the benefits in front of you and understand what it means to give up something, Master is very pleased. Zhu Yi also smiled. It's all thanks to Master's guidance. Next, Zhu Yi focused on nourishing his pill cauldron while Lin Feng turned his attention back to the auction. After the previous few auction items had been heated up, the auction had gradually become white-hot. Song Fu was in a good mood. Every guest participating in the auction had to provide an item to be auctioned, but the Heavenly Trade Pavilion had to choose from among them and choose the most outstanding and best item to auction. The Heavenly Trade Pavilion had to take a cut of the final price of every item that was auctioned. The higher the final price, the greater the Heavenly Trade Pavilion's profit. In this auction, there would be many old enemies. When their anger flared up, the final transaction price would likely be very high. Song Fu waved his hand, and the next auction item appeared. It was a small exquisite tower. Countless scarlet lightning flashed in the tower. If one looked closely, they would discover that these lightning bolts eventually turned into scarlet flames with threatening firepower. This tower is called the Scarlet Blaze Tower of Brilliance Lightning. It is an arcane artifact. Although it is only a golden elixir period arcane artifact, it contains a large amount of scarlet blaze lightning fire. Song Fu introduced it. As everyone knows, the scarlet blaze lightning fire is one of the strongest spirit fires in the world apart from the 7 great true fires. It is almost comparable to the great thunderclap temple's Akalanatha fury. Those who knew their stuff became excited. The 7 great true fires, the 6 great true waters, and the 4 great divine winds were all things that could only be encountered by luck. Even if one encountered them, whether or not one could subdue and refine them was a problem. Taking a step back, a spirit fire like the Scarlet Blaze Lightning Fire was a very good choice. Song Fu then announced the starting price. This Scarlet Blaze Lightning Pagoda starts at 50 vermilion talismans. Every increase in bid must be at least 1 vermilion talisman. The entire auction site fell silent. This item was not cheap. Only a late golden elixir cultivator could refine a vermilion talisman. 50 vermilion talismans was equivalent to 500 green talismans and 5,000 yellow talismans. This was a huge sum. Moreover, this was only the starting price. However, when one thought about the magical uses of the Scarlet Blaze Lightning Fire, it was understandable. This Scarlet Blaze Lightning Pagoda could be considered a top-notch arcane artifact of the Golden Elixir period. Even if a Yuanying stage ancestor bought it, the Spirit Fire would be useful, 51 vermilion talismans. Someone quickly made a bid. The price continued to soar, and in the blink of an eye, it reached 70 vermilion talismans. I bid 75 vermilion talismans. The auction site fell silent again. Everyone's eyes were focused on a spot of light. In the Mount Shu Sword Sect seats, White Reel sneered. That Lin Feng is afraid that we will raise the price. Although he entered with the Heavenly Sword Sect's Yang Tonghui, it was just a cover-up. The seat next to True Monarch Mirror Flower Miao Shihao should belong to him or his disciple. This seat is what he is really using to participate in the bidding. Beside White Reel, the short and fat elder had a look of disdain. Teach him a lesson. Let him know that his third-rate sect with no foundation is not worth mentioning in front of Mount Shu. Chapter 193. 1 Purple Talisman. Beside White Reel and the short and fat elder, the old man who cultivated the Taiyin sword artifact, who was already old, directly called out a price. Furthermore, he raised the price by a large margin. 1 purple talisman was equivalent to 100 vermilion talismans. The Mount Shu sword sect was a sacred ground for sword cultivators. They did not study spells and talismans, but that did not stop them from collecting a large number of talismans. It could be said that the Mount Shu sword sect was the wealthiest among everyone present, apart from the Heavenly Trade Pavilion. Do you really like this Scarlet Blaze Lightning Pagoda? If not, don't compete with the Mount Shu sword sect. Even if I support you, I might not be a match for them in terms of wealth. Miao Shihao transmitted his voice, there should be better things coming up. Lin Feng's divine god of battle clone sat on the seat expressionlessly. Silently, he looked at the Scarlet Blaze Lightning Pagoda beside Song Fu. Xiao Yan turned around, Master. The divine god of battle clone smiled, do as you wish. Xiao Yan nodded and rubbed his palms together excitedly, 110 vermilion talismans, 150 vermilion talismans. You're still far from being able to compete with Mount Shu in terms of wealth. Baizhen sneered and increased the price without hesitation. With his increase in price, everyone understood that Baizhen was purposely going against Lin Feng. In the grotto heaven, countless divine wills intertwined with one another as everyone exchanged opinions. A middle-aged cultivator asked curiously, who is the Mount Shu sword sect competing with? Taishu Temple. An old man's voice came from a rock not far away, don't you know what happened at the Sand Continent 3 days ago? Oh, Elder Fei, it's you. I really didn't know, I just arrived at the Sand Continent today. Old Fei understood, then it's no wonder. This old man will tell you. 3 days ago, a powerful person suddenly appeared and called himself the master of the Xian Gate. His disciples called themselves the disciples of the Xian Gate Heavenly Sect, greatly losing face for the Mount Shu Sword Sect. The middle-aged cultivator was shocked. Oh. Since the fall of the Great Thunderclap Temple, other than Taishu Temple and the Great Zhou Dynasty, there are still people who dare to provoke the Mount Shu Sword Sect? Another woman's voice interrupted, you really don't say, that master of the Celestial Sect of Wonders does have some magical powers. With a wave of his hand, he trapped all 4 Jindan stage sword elders of Mount Shu and suppressed their cultivation to the Foundation Establishment stage. Then, he sent one of his Foundation Establishment stage disciples to challenge them. The middle-aged cultivator pondered, if they're both Foundation Establishment realm cultivators, Mount Shu sword cultivators of Shu Sword Sect wouldn't lose, right? Sword cultivators from Shu Sword Sect Sword Dao. Sword cultivators of Dao Sect Sword cultivators are of Shu Dao. Zhen and Sword Elder Sword cultivators. Vermilion Sect cultivators Talisman Dragon. Zhen Sect cultivators that cultivation was Dragon Sword cultivator of Talisman Sect. By the way, although the elder's cultivation was suppressed, he was still at the peak of Foundation Establishment realm. That Mystic Gate disciple was at the middle stage of Foundation Establishment realm. The middle-aged cultivator was speechless. He subconsciously wanted to refute, but he found that many spiritual wills in the hall were transmitting the same information. With so many people testifying, it couldn't be fake. So powerful. The middle-aged cultivator murmured, then, the person competing with Shu Mountain is the Mystic Gate Master? Old Fei's voice came, I'm afraid so. That day, the Mystic Gate Master was together with True Monarch Mirror Flower Miao Shihao. True Monarch Miao should be the one who introduced him to the auction. Someone retorted, but I saw the Mystic Gate Master enter the cave with True Monarch Yang of the Heavenly Sword Sect. Old Fei paused, I'm not sure about that. But other than him, there shouldn't be anyone else in San State City who has enmity with Shu Mountain. Maybe Shu Mountain really wants the Scarlet Blaze Lightning Pagoda? Old Fei nodded, that's possible. Silently, let's watch. On the Shu Mountain Sword Sect seats, the tall elder who cultivated the Shaoyang sword also frowned and said, it's not appropriate to spend so much money just to compete with someone, right? True White smiled, that's true, but there's no need to worry. We really do need the Scarlet Blaze Lightning Pagoda. Fourth Granduncle has recently reached a bottleneck in cultivating a lightning fire flying sword technique he created. He just happens to need a high-quality spiritual fire to help him. The short and fat elder nodded and said, it'd be best to have the 7 great true fires, but they can only be found by luck. The Scarlet Blaze Lightning Fire is one of the few spiritual fires in the world that is second only to the 7 great true fires. It also naturally carries the power of lightning, which is exactly what Fourth Granduncle wants. The tall elder's face relaxed a little, that's good. Lin Feng's war god clone was also talking to Miao Shihao, what's the highest price you can bid for the Scarlet Blaze Lightning Pagoda? Not more than 5 purple talismans. Any higher and it'll just be pure fighting spirit, Miao Shihao answered without hesitation. The war god clone nodded, and at this moment, Xiao Yan also started a new round of bidding, 2 purple talismans. The heavens hollow was completely bustling. The scale of the bidding was really going to be a fight. Xiao Yan made his bid. Before he finished speaking, Xu Shan followed without hesitation, 3 purple talismans. The crowd was silent for a long time. When Song Fu was about to announce that the Scarlet Blaze Lightning Pagoda belonged to Xu Shan, Xiao Yan's clear voice rang out in the heavens hollow again, 350 vermilion talismans. On the Xu Shan side, True White and the rest looked at each other. The oldest elder said slowly, kill him. True White nodded and immediately bid, 5 purple talismans. The crowd was in an uproar. Xu Shan's bidding method was too overbearing. Master, what do you think Xu Shan's reaction will be if I bid 501 vermilion talismans? Xiao Yan's eyes flickered as he looked at the Shushan sword sect seats. The war god clone did not comment, "Forget it, that's too unbecoming. This is just a warm-up." Xiao Yan nodded and did not bid anymore. Just as Miao Shihao said, 5 purple talismans was almost the highest price for the Scarlet Blaze Lightning Pagoda. If the two were to bid any higher, they would have to fight for real. Therefore, when Xiao Yan gave up, the others in the Heaven's Hollow did not bid anymore. The pagoda was eventually bought by the Shushan sword sect at the price of 5 purple talismans. The others were a little disappointed. They thought the Scarlet Blaze Lightning Pagoda would be sold for a sky-high price. However, the appearance of the next auction item quickly attracted everyone's attention. In front of Song Fu, a jade scroll floated in the air. Everyone participating in the auction was knowledgeable and could tell that this was a technique transmission jade scroll. It was specially used to record Dao techniques and divine arts. Lin Feng's eyes widened. He did not even scan the scroll with his divine sense. Just the aura emitted from the scroll felt as heavy as the ground. It was obviously not the aura of the scroll itself. It could only be the aura of the Dao and mystic arts recorded in the scroll. As expected, Song Fu slowly said, "This scroll contains an earth element Dao and art, called the Book of the God of Earth. Even though it's incomplete, it's of an extremely high grade. The starting price is 30 vermilion talismans, and each increment must be at least 1 vermilion talisman." There was a slight commotion in the Heaven's Hollow. Lin Feng's mind stirred, and he caught a strand of broken divine sense. The Book of the God of Earth. Its full name should be the Book of the God of Earth. It contains the true meaning of Earth. It's a top earth element Dao and is above the Great Thunderclap Monastery's Ksitigarbha Sutra. It's a pity it's incomplete, the Book of the God of Earth. Lin Feng calculated in his heart. As he was calculating, the price of the Book of the God of Earth had already reached 90 vermilion talismans. Lin Feng took a deep breath, and his main body made a bid. 1 purple talisman. The moment he spoke, the hall quietened down slightly. On the Shushan sword sect's side, White Real and the rest sneered. Is he going to fight bare-chested? We have no use for this Dao. But we can't let him have it easy. That's the logic. When the price rose to 170 vermilion talismans, the other opponents were all defeated in front of Lin Feng. Even though the Book of the God of the Earth Dao technique was good, it was incomplete after all. This immediately made its price drop by more than 10 times. 2 purple talismans. At this moment, White Real and the rest finally made their move. The moment they opened their mouth, they raised the price to 2 purple talismans, which was also 200 vermilion talismans. Lin Feng's expression didn't change, 210 vermilion talismans. This time, without waiting for White Real and the rest of Shushan to raise the price, a cold and aged voice suddenly rushed in, 240 vermilion talismans. The entire hall was slightly stirred. Clearly, they didn't expect a third party to forcefully intervene. Soon, someone recognized it. That's the Yu clan's seat. The person who made the bid was Yuan Feng. He sneered and looked at Lin Feng's seat. Who asked you to be so arrogant? Today, I'll teach you a lesson. Lin Feng was expressionless. He just calmly raised the price again, 260 vermilion talismans. This time, White Real and the rest didn't join in the fun. They all gloated as they watched Yuan Feng take over their banner and raise the price. I don't know where this low-level rogue cultivator came from. Today, I'll let you know that the world is very big. The short and fat elder laughed heartily. Today, we're not the only ones who want to deal with you. The price of this incomplete Dao technique had already been raised to 550 vermilion talismans. It had already far exceeded its original price. At the same time, it was also the highest price that had appeared in today's auction. Lin Feng lightly knocked on the short table beside him. After a while, he said, 560 vermilion talismans. Yuan Feng didn't hesitate, 570 vermilion talismans. After a pause, Lin Feng slowly said, 6 purple talismans. Once this price was out, Yuan Feng immediately knew that this was Lin Feng's final bid. If he raised it any higher, Lin Feng would give up. As the Yuanying patriarch, he naturally could afford 6 purple talismans. Moreover, he had the support of the Yu clan. But Yuan Feng himself wasn't interested in the Book of the Kismet. He raised the price only to disgust Lin Feng and vent his anger. He had already received news from the Heavenly Trade Pavilion that there would be an auction item that he really wanted to appear in a while. He needed to preserve his strength. He had already achieved his goal by making Lin Feng bleed. According to his estimates, the highest value of this incomplete Book of the Kismet would be 3 purple talismans. Now, he had raised it by a fold. And this was after Lin Feng had given up on the Scarlet Blaze Pagoda of Thunder Brilliance. Otherwise, he would have to bleed even more. Yuan Feng felt extremely carefree. This old man and the Shushan sword sect will raise the price to encircle you. Don't think you'll have an easy time today. In the end, the final price of the Book of the Kismet was 6 purple talismans, or 600 vermilion talismans. Yang Tonghui of the Heavenly Sword sect next door to Lin Feng transmitted over. Sect leader Lin, if there's anything you like later, my Heavenly Sword sect can lend you some talisman money. That's not necessary. Lin Feng smiled slightly. Beside him, Yu Hongyan hesitated before asking, Senior, 6 purple talismans to buy such a Dao technique. Isn't that a little? Lin Feng smiled. It's fine. I don't have to pay for it myself anyway. As they spoke, another auction item appeared. Chapter 194. The next item to be auctioned after the Book of the Kismet was a small black seal. Song Fu held the small black seal in his hand. Slowly, he said, this treasure is called the Seal of Sealing. It can store spiritual power in advance and then feed it back to the owner. The spiritual power sealed in the seal will not be lost. Then, the spiritual power can be extracted from the seal in batches or all at once. It is all up to the owner. Song Fu paused and added, after testing it myself, the maximum amount of spiritual power this treasure can store is enough for an early-stage Yuanying cultivator to replenish all his spiritual power in one go. There was a commotion in the grotto heaven. Countless spiritual wills intertwined. Among them, there was movement from the Yuanying elders. It was obvious that they had finally found something that interested them. The world was big and full of wonders. Many spiritual pills and herbs had the effect of replenishing spiritual power. The only difference was the strength of the effect. Under normal circumstances, the best spiritual pill to replenish spiritual power was the 6-unity pill from Taishu Temple. It could allow an early-stage Yuanying cultivator to instantly replenish all his spiritual power when his spiritual power was depleted. Under special circumstances, it was equivalent to giving people an extra life in battle. It was not only useful in battle. When a cultivator reached a bottleneck and wanted to break through the bottleneck, they needed a large amount of spiritual power. If they did not have enough spiritual power, they could consume a 6-unity pill to replenish their spiritual power and break through the bottleneck. When they ran out of spiritual power to refine pills or artifacts, they could use this type of pill to replenish their spiritual power and persist until the refinement of the pill or artifact was completed. The Heavenly Pavilion auction once auctioned a 6-unity pill. The final price of one pill was 4 purple amulets. This showed how valuable this pill was. The 6-unity pill was good stuff. However, it was a consumable item after all. It would be gone after one use. The more it was used, the less it would be. The Seal of Sealing being auctioned now could be used repeatedly by injecting spiritual power into it. Song Fu looked around and said slowly, the starting price of this Seal of Sealing is 4 purple amulets. Each bid must be at least 10 red amulets. Just as he finished speaking, the grotto heaven was filled with calls of bids. This round of the auction had entered a white-hot stage since the beginning, and in a short period of time, the price of the seal had already risen to the price of 8 violet talismans. At this price, the number of people participating in the auction decreased rapidly. Almost all the cultivators of the Golden Elixir period withdrew, and the ones who continued to compete were the old monsters of the Yuanying period. Purple talismans, or in other words, elemental talismans, were different from other talismans. For Yuanying cultivators, they couldn't casually draw them. Every purple talisman was the condensation of the creator's magic power. A certain number of purple amulets in one's hand were also powerful weapons. In actual combat, they might not be any less useful than sealing seals. Therefore, when the price climbed to about 20 purple talismans, the speed of the price increase obviously slowed down. When it reached 22 purple talismans, the price finally stopped. Right at this moment, Yuan Feng suddenly made a bid, 25 purple talismans. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone in the paradise felt their spirits lift. 25 purple talismans. If it were an independent cultivator, even if it were the patriarch of the Yuanying period, it would be almost all of his wealth. Only someone like Yuan Feng, who had the backing of the Yu clan, one of the 4 great clans of the Great Qin dynasty, could bid without batting an eye. Yuan Feng stared at the ceiling mark as a smile broke out on his face. This was the main objective of this auction. For the sake of this item, he had even ignored the last item of the auction. The mysterious underworld true water was the coldest in the world. Only the mysterious underworld race, which possessed extraordinary talent and coexisted with the true water, could truly control the mysterious underworld true water with ease. The ancestor of the Yu clan could be considered to be exceptionally talented. He had created the mysterious underworld Dao technique, which allowed human cultivators to also control this kind of true water. However, the physical strength of human cultivators naturally couldn't compare to that of mysterious underworld beasts. This created a predicament. Although cultivators who cultivated the mysterious underworld Dao technique could cultivate mysterious underworld true water, there was a limit to the amount of true water. If the limit was exceeded, there was a possibility that one would be frozen stiff by the true water. Since ancient times, the Yu clan had 2 solutions to this problem. One was to work hard to raise the realm of one's own Dao technique, and from there control more mysterious underworld true water. The other was to focus on cultivating one's physical abilities, and raise the strength of one's physical body. From there, one would be able to withstand the extreme coldness brought about by the true water. Yuan Feng's talent in the path of the physical body was not high. This caused him to think of other ways to raise his strength, and increase the amount of mysterious underworld true water he had. The seal of seal that could store magic power became his target. Old Man Yu was determined to obtain this item today. 30 purple talismans. Just as Old Man Yu was looking around, a sweet child's voice suddenly rang out in the heavenly passage. Yuan Feng almost fell from his seat. Looking carefully, the voice came from the seat where Lin Feng was sitting. 32 purple talismans. Although Yuan Feng was furious, he still followed the price without any hesitation. On the seat, the little guy's big black eyes looked towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled, "Make your own decision." The little guy smiled and nodded. Without hesitation, he immediately raised the price, 35 purple talismans. Yuan Feng's eyes instantly narrowed. The other party's attitude and the increase in the price meant that it was not a child's play. Lin Feng was also not fighting with him, but really wanted the seal of seal for himself. His thirst for the seal of seal is no less than mine. This thought flashed through Yuan Feng's mind. Just as he was thinking, he suddenly heard another bid, 36 purple talismans. Yuan Feng was stunned. Looking towards the source of the voice, he instantly did not know whether to laugh or cry. Damn, it was actually Mount Shu's sword sect. These sword cultivators were really going to fight with Lin Feng. Lin Feng did not move, so they did not make a sound. The moment Lin Feng raised the price, they immediately raised the price. And White Real and the others had clearly observed for a long time. They were sure that this seal of seal was what Lin Feng really wanted. They did not have to worry about Lin Feng digging a big hole for them. Now it was time for them to dig a hole and force Lin Feng to jump in. The problem is, I also really want this seal of seal. Yuan Feng wailed in his heart. This time, it was his own people fighting his own people. 37 purple talismans. No, 38 purple talismans. Yuan Feng immediately raised the price. Who knew that the little guy was even more violent than him? 40 purple talismans. Yuan Feng wanted to cry but had no tears. Before the little guy finished speaking, White Real continued, 41 purple talismans. Yuan Feng leaned back in his seat. He was no longer anxious. 40 purple talismans was almost his limit. He stared at Lin Feng and Mount Shu Sword Sect's seats and gritted his teeth. Go on, go on. If you force this old man into a corner, I will directly block the entrance of Sand Continent City and rob it. When the price soared past 40 purple talismans, the little guy's bid became more cautious. After a long time, he said, 42. His momentum of raising the price also clearly slowed down. In Mount Shu Sword Sect's seats, the 4 Golden Elixir period elders were also in a dispute. Do we still want to raise the price? White Real asked hesitantly. The tall elder who cultivated the Shaoyang sword said angrily, that Lin Feng has clearly reached his limit. If we raise the price, we will be buying this seal of seal back ourselves. That short and stout elder curled his lips. Buying it back is actually not a big deal. You and I are sword cultivators. Although we are sharp in battle, if we show off our abilities, we will not have enough strength in the future. With this treasure to replenish our spiritual power, we can make up for our shortcomings and greatly increase our battle strength. The tall elder retorted, you also know that we are sword cultivators. We sword cultivators have nothing but the sword. It is precisely because we have cultivated the sword to the extreme that we have today's achievements. Relying on external objects and always thinking of leaving a way out for ourselves will only cause our cultivation of the sword to regress. The oldest of the 4, the elder with the highest seniority, suddenly said, there is still one last item that has not appeared. When these words were said, the other 3 fell silent. White Real asked, then, let's stop here. The elder said, we can raise the price again. In my opinion, that Lin Feng really wants this seal of seal. White Real nodded and immediately raised the price again, 43 purple talismans. This time, Xiao Budian was similarly silent for a long time, then slowly said, 44. This old man bids 45. Almost as soon as the little guy finished speaking, Yuan Feng, who had been silent for a while, suddenly made a bid. The heavenly passage immediately quieted down. Everyone was waiting for the movement from Lin Feng's seat. Only this time, the little guy finally did not continue to make a bid. Yuan Feng also let out a sigh of relief. 45 purple talismans had actually exceeded his limit. If the other party continued to raise the price, then he would really have to consider robbing them afterwards. The people of Mount Shu Sword Sect were all annoyed, damn, to actually let this old ghost get it. The other people in the heavenly passage were also discussing. This master of the mysterious gate is only SOSO. Why did he retreat? Maybe he is waiting for the last good item. That is also possible. If that is the case, there will be a good show to watch. Everyone, next is our last auction item today, the highlight of the finale. Song Fu was beaming with joy. Just now, the seal of seal was sold for a sky-high price. How could he not be happy? This is a very special auction item. It is a puppet avatar. Song Fu gently clapped his hands, and a figure flashing with golden light floated out from the ball of light behind him. It was a platinum tiger lying on the ground, but its body was much smaller. A cold light flashed in the fierce tiger's eyes, as if it was alive. However, its line of sight was not focused, and its eyes were as clear as a baby's. It was obvious that it did not have its own thoughts and consciousness. However, the powerful aura emitted from its body showed that it had the strength of the peak of the golden elixir period. Its body's metal essence was so thick that it almost condensed into a substance, like a sharp steel knife. This golden tiger avatar's self-consciousness has been completely erased. Anyone can refine it and turn it into their own avatar. Including the group of Yuanying cultivators, everyone was moved. For cultivators below the Yuanying stage, an avatar that had the strength of the peak of the golden elixir period might even surpass their own body. As for nascent soul cultivators, this golden tiger avatar was obviously very strong. In the future, they could use it as a body for reincarnation. Golden elixir period cultivators had a lifespan of 1,000 years, and Yuanying cultivators had a longer lifespan. However, without reaching the primordial spirit realm, there was a limit to how long one's lifespan could be. Once their lifespan came to an end, their bodies would decay, and many Yuanying old monsters would choose to reincarnate. This golden tiger avatar would become a very good choice. If they could find more materials and refine it, they might even be able to obtain an avatar with the strength of the Yuanying stage. How could they not be excited? Looking at the boiling auction house, the corner of Lin Feng's mouth revealed a smile. Chapter 195. Everyone here knows what's good and what's not. I won't waste any more time. Song Fu looked at everyone with a smile and said softly, "This golden tiger avatar has a starting price of 10 purple talismans." The entire grotto heaven instantly quieted down. 10 purple talismans had already set a record for the Heavenly Pavilion's auction. But the silence was only temporary. Soon, the first person made a bid, 11 purple talismans, I'll take it. His bid was mocked by the others, only 1 purple talisman and you dare to boast shamelessly. If you want to play, let's play big. I'll bid 15 purple talismans. 17. 18. 20. The price kept rising and quickly rose to 30 purple talismans. Yuan Feng looked at the golden tiger avatar with envy. He was not proficient in corporeal body mystiques and was a pure Dharma cultivator. If he could have such a powerful corporeal body as an avatar guard, his combat power would be even greater. For a split second, he regretted taking the sealing seal with all his might. In the Shu Mountain Sword sect seats, White Reel and the others looked at each other. They were not the final bidders for the previous few auction items, so they still kept a lot of money. The last auction item did not disappoint. White Reel and the others looked at it with envy, but they seemed a little awkward. White Reel coughed, "Let's buy it first. Bring it back to the sect and let the elders decide." The tall elder was a little hesitant, but looking at the trend of the price, it's very likely to exceed our authority, don't worry, buy it. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in their ears. A simple-looking young man suddenly appeared behind them. He wore a linen robe and had a long sword at his waist, but it was not the Shu Mountain Sword sect's standard sword. He did not reveal any aura, making people feel that he was completely an ordinary person who had not cultivated. But when White Reel and the others saw him, they all bowed respectfully, "Chief Kong." Facing this linen-robe young man, White Reel and the others were respectful, but they were also a little afraid. This was because the seemingly ordinary young man before him was Kong Chang, the head disciple of the Li Meng sword and weapon faction, one of the 6 major branches of Shu Mountain. Among the 6 meridians of Shu Mountain, the Li Meng sword was the most vicious and sinister, with the heaviest murderous aura. Each of its disciples killed people like flies, and Kong Chang was the best among them. He could be called a human butcher. Kong Chang looked young, but in fact, he had been famous for nearly 1,000 years. He was already a great sword cultivator of the Yuanying stage. Under his accumulated power, even Bai Zhen and the other 3 who were from the same sect of Shushan trembled in front of him. Kong Chang calmly looked at the golden tiger avatar beside Song Fu in the center of the space. This avatar's metal essence qi is extremely abundant. It is suitable for us swords to cultivate into outer body incarnations. I must obtain it. White Real nodded heavily, and then he turned around right away and directly bid 40 violet talismans. As soon as the bid was made, the entire grotto heaven fell silent. No one had expected that the Mount Shu Sword sect would make such a big move the moment they made a move. They raised the price from 30 violet talismans to 40 violet talismans in one go, showing their domineering determination to obtain it. Those who could participate in the auction were naturally rich, but there were not many who could spend 40 violet talismans in one go. After all, many people would not spend all their money just to buy one thing. Someone tried to bid and raised the price to 42 violet talismans. In terms of momentum, they lost to the Mount Shu Sword sect by a large margin. Kong Chang waved his hand like he was shooing away flies, and White Real directly bid 50 violet talismans. As soon as this price was made, the venue became completely quiet. The cultivators of the Golden Elixir period had already entered a state of watching the show. An auction of this level was not something they could afford. Most of the Yuanying stage cultivators also gave up. There were a few who could also afford the price of 50 violet talismans, but seeing that the Mount Shu Sword sect was completely treating money as toilet paper, they also chose to give up. White Real and the others looked at each other, and a smile appeared on their faces. Kong Chang lightly tapped the hilt of his sword and said, "Go and get the thing." Before he finished speaking, a voice suddenly sounded in the air, 60 violet talismans. Boom! This grotto was in an uproar. Everyone stared at a rock shrouded in light in the air. After the previous auction, everyone already knew that this was Lin Feng's seat. Lin Feng's voice clearly echoed in the grotto, "I bid 60 violet talismans." Kong Chang's expression immediately turned cold, and he looked at where Lin Feng's seat was. Is that the so-called Xianmen Tianzong you guys are talking about? White Real and the others nodded together, and Kong Chang's hand grasped the hilt of his sword. True Lord Kong wants to fight here. A voice suddenly sounded in Kong Chang's mind. Kong Chang grunted, and finally moved his hand away from the hilt of his sword. He said coldly, "Bid 65 violet talismans." Seeing that the Mount Shu Sword sect was bargaining, it was obvious that they were going to fight head-on. Everyone in the auction became even more excited. Is the Xianmen sect master finally going to fight? Will it be a fight to the death with the Mount Shu Sword sect? I wonder who will win. There's going to be a good show. Everyone in the grotto discussed. On Lin Feng's side, whether it was his main body or the god of war clone, Xiao Yan, his 3 disciples, or Yu Hongyan, all had a strange expression on their faces. They wanted to laugh, but did not dare to. Xiao Yan looked at the Mount Shu Sword sect seat and sneered, "Idiot, you're in trouble. My master entrusted that golden tiger clone to the Heavenly Trade Pavilion for auction. This golden tiger avatar in front of him is the gunmetal tiger king that Lin Feng killed back then. He refined half of the gunmetal tiger king's body and 1/3 of the demon nascent essence together and turned it into an avatar. 70 violet talismans." Lin Feng smiled and raised the price again. He was very comfortable now. Didn't you guys have a good time raising the price with me before? Now I'll let you know what it means to have a change of fortune. Miao Shihao transmitted his voice from the side, "Such a good clone, even if you can't use it yourself, you can leave it for your disciples. Why sell it?" He paused and continued, "And now it seems that it's very likely that someone from Mount Shu got your clone. Aren't you going to become an enemy?" Lin Feng smiled, "It's just a clone, it's not a big deal. It's fine if it falls into the hands of unrelated people, but if someone wants to use this clone to make things difficult for me, they'll only be the unlucky one." Lin Feng naturally knew that this golden tiger clone actually had a big flaw, but this flaw would not show normally, and Lin Feng just happened to have a way to deal with this weakness. "I'm selling fake goods, right? TSK, people who buy fake goods are pitiful, and people who spend their entire fortune on fake goods are even more pitiful. Take warning, take warning. At this moment, Mount Shu's side had already raised the price to 72 purple talismans, and Lin Feng did not stand on ceremony with a bid of 75 purple talismans. After a moment of silence from the Mount Shu sword sect seats, a cold voice suddenly rang out, Song Fu, I request to check this person's bidding qualifications. I suspect that he is bidding maliciously. He doesn't have that much money. Everyone in the cave was discussing, is Mount Shu unable to compete with others in price, and now wants to use their power to suppress others? Not necessarily. I've never heard of the name of the Taoist sect master before. I don't know where he came from, or if he really has such a rich family background. Who knows? Now we'll see how the Heavenly Trade Pavilion handles this. Kong Chang's tone was arrogant and extremely rude. Song Fu frowned slightly, and after a moment of silence, he seemed to have received instructions from someone. He slowly replied, this sect leader Lin has enough money to participate in the auction. My Heavenly Trade Pavilion can prove this. Kong Chang paused, staring at Lin Feng. After a long time, he said, 80. Lin Feng faintly smiled, lightly flying out another sentence, 85. Kong Chang felt unwell. His hand gripped the hilt of the sword at his waist, and he wanted to unsheath it several times to make Lin Feng bleed on the spot. But he could feel a majestic will watching him, forcing him to give up on the idea of making a move here. True Lord Kong, listen to this old man's advice. You don't have this clone. The voice rang out in Kong Chang's ear again. I must have it. Taking a deep breath, Kong Chang's state of mind became calm again. The voice sighed softly, and did not continue speaking. Kong Chang's face was expressionless, and he said word by word, 100. Zhang. Purple. Talisman. The cave was instantly silent. Lin Feng smiled slightly. He estimated Kong Chang's bottom line, and finally stopped raising the price. He did not want to go overboard and buy back his own things. Seeing that Lin Feng finally stopped raising the price, Mount Shu sword sect, including Kong Chang and White Real, all breathed a sigh of relief. With the wealth of Mount Shu sword sect, 100 purple talismans were nothing. But if these 100 purple talismans were only used to buy one thing, even they would be bleeding in their hearts. In fact, it was no longer dripping blood. Instead, it was spurting blood like a fountain. But when Kong Chang turned his head to look at the golden tiger clone, his bad mood suddenly disappeared, and his eyes shone with a blazing light. I will refine it carefully, and I will definitely be able to upgrade this clone to the level of Yuanying stage. While Kong Chang was thinking, he suddenly heard the voices of people in the cave getting louder and louder. Why does this golden tiger clone look so much like the Gung-Jin tiger demon tribe? I heard that the Gung-Jin tiger demon tribe suffered a great loss in the Changchun peak of the Great Hengduan mountain a few days ago. Even the Gung-Jin tiger king, the leader of the tribe, died in battle. Changchun peak. How could the people of the herb sect be so powerful? Did the wilderness sword sect take action? No, I heard that a man named Lin Feng killed the Gung-Jin tiger king. Wait, isn't the name of the master of Xian sect Lin Feng? Could it be that this golden tiger clone was auctioned by the master of Xian sect? Then Mount Shu sword sect, hearing this, Kong Chang's face instantly turned from red to white, and then to green. A mouthful of blood rushed to his throat, and he could not stop it. Lin Feng. Chapter 196. Lin Feng sat on his seat and listened to the discussions of the people in the grotto heaven. He then looked at the system cheerfully. His reputation in the northern region of Kunlun Mountain had risen from 75 to 85. According to the system's explanation, a reputation of 80 could attract outstanding talents with a total potential of 24 and above to take the initiative to acknowledge him as their master. The system's main mission required Lin Feng to accept a total of 30 disciples with a total potential of 25 and above. Now that his reputation had met the requirements, as long as Lin Feng spread the news, there would be a large number of talents coming to acknowledge him as their master. As for when and how to spread the news, and the specific process of opening the mountain gate, Lin Feng still needed to think about it carefully. Accepting disciples here in Sand Continent City and then bringing them all back to the mountain should be the most convenient. Kunlun Mountain's terrain is complicated. It's too difficult to let a bunch of kids who haven't learned Dao techniques cross the mountains to reach the foot of Lingyun Peak. But it's convenient for me to accept disciples in Sand Continent City, and it's also convenient for my enemies to find trouble with me. Lin Feng pondered, yes, I have a plan. But for the plan to be carried out smoothly, I still need some conditions. The Golden Tiger clone was the last auction item. Once the Golden Tiger clone had an owner, the auction officially ended. However, the vast ocean spell assembly was not over yet. Those who were willing to trade privately could still stay in the grotto heaven of the Heavenly Trade Pavilion. It would only be cleared after 3 days. However, Lin Feng's objective had been achieved. Under the guidance of the Heavenly Trade Pavilion's deacon, he met Song Fu. Lin Feng said, "Can I trouble Mr. Song to help me exchange 10 of these purple talismans for 1,000 vermilion talismans?" Song Fu nodded, "No problem. Our pavilion does business in this area. Naturally, we have all kinds of talisman money in reserve." He raised his hand, and someone brought over a sufficient number of talismans. Sect leader Lin's items should be sold for a total of 150 purple talismans. Then, you bought the remnant of the Book of the State at the price of 6 purple talismans, so it's a total of 144 purple talismans. According to our pavilion's usual practice, we will take 1/10 of the total as a commission. Therefore, your final reward is 130 purple talismans. According to your request, here are 120 purple talismans and 1,000 vermilion talismans. Miao Shihao, who came with Lin Feng, was shocked. He covered his mouth and exclaimed, "How can there be so many?" His eyes flashed as he came to a realization. Wait. 150 purple talismans. Could it be that you sold the Scarlet Blaze Lightning Tower and the Seal of Sealing as well? Lin Feng faintly smiled and nodded. The Scarlet Blaze Pagoda and the Sealing Seal were the treasures that Xiao Yan and Xiao Budian had found when they were strolling around the Sand Continent City. At that time, Lin Feng had sighed with emotion that the power of Eight's fortune was also extraordinary. With these things in hand, the moment Lin Feng heard about the auction, he formed a plan in his mind. The Scarlet Blaze Pagoda, the Seal of Sealing, and the Golden Tiger clone were all entrusted to the Heavenly Trade Pavilion by Lin Feng. In this auction, Lin Feng did not spend a single cent. He picked up the Immeasurable Light Rulai Sutra and the Remnant Book of the State for free, and earned a net profit of 130 purple talismans. Although the Scarlet Blaze Lightning Pagoda contained the Scarlet Blaze Lightning Fire, it was obviously inferior to Xiao Yan's Nether Evil Blaze and Lin Feng's True Sun Fire that he was about to successfully cultivate. Naturally, it was not of much use. As for the Seal of Sealing, with the purple chi of the heavens, Lin Feng and his disciples did not need to worry about magic power when they fought with others. Exchanging 2 useless things for a large amount of talisman money was naturally a worthwhile transaction. As for the Golden Tiger clone, it was killing 3 birds with 1 stone. It earned money, increased his reputation, and conveniently planted a hidden chess piece. This business was even more profitable. Lin Feng walked around the auction today and bought what he wanted. There would naturally be people who would pay for it. This time, Lin Feng really had to count money until his hands were cramping. Miao Shihao clicked his tongue, his gaze looking at Lin Feng was full of splendor. "You're really," Lin Feng secretly shivered. "I'm not afraid of anything, but I'm afraid that your brother Shihao will look at me with such a loving gaze." Song Fu looked at Lin Feng and sighed. Sect leader Lin, good move. Back then, when Lin Feng's God of War clone entered the grotto heaven with Miao Shihao, out of respect for Miao Shihao, Song Fu did not use his magic power to investigate the true appearance of the god of war clone. However, when his gaze swept across Xiao Yan and Zhu Yi behind the god of war clone, he knew that the god of war clone was definitely related to Lin Feng. As the local tyrant of Sand Continent City, Heavenly Trade Pavilion's intelligence-gathering ability far surpassed others. 3 days ago, when Lin Feng had a conflict with Yuan Feng and White Real, Zhu Yi and Xiao Yan were not present. However, when they met up with Lin Feng afterwards, they were immediately noticed by Heavenly Trade Pavilion spies. However, Song Fu did not expose them at that time. He and White Real had thought that Lin Feng was worried that he would be targeted at the auction and be maliciously raised. Therefore, he had secretly made preparations. In reality, what Lin Feng wanted was this effect of trying to cover up, to further numb them. Lin Feng smiled slightly. Occasionally. In the long years, I have to find some fun so that I won't be bored. He thought for a moment and then said, Mr. Song, perhaps I will have a chance to work with you again soon. At that time, I might have to trouble you. Song Fu smiled. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Lin Feng put away the talismans and thought, good heavens, so many talismans. I can use them to play desperate gambit. If I don't like someone, thousands of talisman money means thousands of spells. I can smash my opponent to death. Thinking of this, he was secretly shocked. Heavenly Trade Pavilion had so many talisman money. If they really met someone who did not know how to open their eyes and provoked them, it would be like driving the poor with wealth. Even a great primordial spirit cultivator would feel dizzy. In the cultivation world where talismans were like money, money could really smash people to death. No wonder Heavenly Trade Pavilion could dominate the western border of the Qin dynasty. It was not without reason. Lin Feng bid farewell to Yang Tonghui and the others of the Heavenly Sword sect, then left the Sand Continent and returned to Mount Kunlun. However, there seemed to be some strange things mixed into the group. Lin Feng looked at Miao Shihao speechlessly. Fellow Taoist Miao, I am going to bring my disciples back to the sect. What are you doing? Miao Shihao said matter-of-factly, returning to the mountain with you. Lin Feng's face was instantly filled with black lines. Fellow Taoist Miao, please listen carefully. I am saying that I am going to bring my disciples back to the cave of my sect. If you want to come and be a guest, of course I welcome you. However, I have been busy recently and will need some time. At that time, my sect will have a grand event, and I will naturally invite you to attend. Miao Shihao covered his mouth and laughed. Of course I heard what you said clearly. It was you who didn't hear what I said. I said, I want to return to the mountain with you. Lin Feng was stunned. Looking at the enchanting and charming brother Shihao, he suddenly had a bad feeling. You can't be thinking of, at least you're not too stupid. Miao Shihao said with a smile, I want to join your Xianmen Tianzong. I wonder if your sect is lacking positions like Elder Protector. Lin Feng was dumbfounded. The system notification rang in his ears. Congratulations, host, for triggering the side quest of Sect Protector. Do you want to accept Loose Cultivator Miao Shihao as a Sect Protector? Lin Feng swallowed and asked with difficulty, why did you suddenly have such an idea? Miao Shihao laughed. Because it's very interesting to follow you. Moreover, you don't seem to get along with those rough guys from Taishu Temple. Before the auction, I already felt that you were very pleasing to the eye, but I didn't have any thoughts of becoming your disciple. However, you really gave me a pleasant surprise during this auction. I was thinking that if I continued to follow you, it would be very interesting, right? Lin Feng laughed dryly. He composed himself and quickly calculated in his heart. There were undoubtedly many benefits to accepting Miao Shihao as a sect protector. First of all, the most direct benefit was that although this guy looked unreliable, he was very strong. In the battle with Yuan Feng was forced to use the Xianming True Water and had almost used 90% of his strength. As for Miao Shihao, he had actually only revealed the tip of the iceberg. His supernatural state and Adumbra were both mysterious and overbearing top-notch magical powers, but they were still not his true strength. According to Lin Feng's conjecture, Miao Shihao's magical powers were very likely to be a mirrored flowers, reflected moon, 4-piece set, which was a complete magical power system. He sought the Tianyi True Water and Taiyin True Water, probably to seek a breakthrough and strengthening in the water technique. Miao Shihao and Kang Nanhua were the same, they could greatly strengthen the forces around Lin Feng. Although Xiao Yan and the other brats were all extraordinary, so much so that even the heavens were jealous of them, their deep potential had not yet been converted into true strength. Right now, they were in their growth period, and it was still not enough to expect them to be able to take charge on their own. With Miao Shihao and Kang Nanhua by his side, many things became easier for Lin Feng. When he sent the few brats out to train, with the two of them by his side to protect them, Lin Feng was also much more at ease. Of course, it was not that there were no disadvantages. For example, Lin Feng could be sure that Miao Shihao's personality was very casual, and it was impossible to expect him to be like Kang Nanhua and give his all for the sect. This brother Shihao, if he found you pleasing to the eye, would help you with everything he had, and would follow you through life and death. Even if it was a mountain of knives or a sea of flames, he would not even blink. But if one day he found you to be an eyesore, then he could only chuckle. However, this did not bother Lin Feng very much. Naturally, he had to use different methods to interact with different people. Everything else was fine, except for this guy's sissy style. The corner of Lin Feng's mouth could not help but twitch. He looked at Miao Shihao and used his mana to transmit his voice. 3 rules. First, don't be such a sissy in the sect. Impossible. Second, don't be like this when you are out of the sect. Why do you care? Third, if you are unhappy on a day and want to leave, let me know in advance. Hearing the third rule, Miao Shihao was clearly stunned. He looked carefully at Lin Feng and realized that Lin Feng was also looking at him calmly. After a long time, Miao Shihao's mouth revealed a smile. It was not charming nor enchanting, just like the spring breeze. It's a deal. Lin Feng also smiled, it's a deal. Unfortunately, in the next second, Brother Shihao returned to his original appearance and covered his mouth with a smile, but I can't do the first two. Let's change to something else. Lin Feng's smile froze on his face. He looked up to the sky and let out a long sigh, then turned around and left. He waved his hand, indicating that Miao Shihao should not say anything and just follow him. Rogue cultivator Miao Shihao has officially become the guardian of the host's sect. The host has completed the side mission of the guardian of the sect. The host is rewarded with 1 lottery ticket. Lin Feng lamented in his heart, why do I feel that I have made the worst decision in my life? After they disappeared from the sky above the sand continent city, a crack suddenly appeared in the void. A sword light retracted, revealing the figure of the Shushan Yuanying stage sword cultivator, Kong Chang. 1 step too late. Kong Chang's eyes were bloodshot as he stared in the direction of Kunlun Mountain. This matter is not over. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.